right, my clock shows 5:30. We will commence with the special meeting, organizational board meeting. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, this time we'll turn it over to Superintendent Hahn to swear in some new school board members.
Fantastic. I'm going to ask that Director Heidman, Director Spear, and Director Donlinger please rise. Okay. It is an honor that you were elected to guide the education of our community's children. As you recite the oath of office, you assume a tremendous responsibility as a director of our school district with the duties empowered by the Minnesota legislature. This power puts you and the other board members of our school board in the position of being morally and legally responsible for equitable, quality education of every student in our district. In carrying out this responsibility, you will be asked to fulfill the roles of vision, structure, accountability, and advocacy. In providing vision, the board, with extensive participation of the community, envisions the community's educational future and then formulates the goals, defines the outcomes, and sets the course for public schools. To achieve the vision, the board establishes a structure and creates an environment designed to ensure all students the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework. Because as a board we must be accountable to the community, we must ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement and all conditions affecting the education of our children. As board members, we serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students and our community schools to advance the vision of our schools. Furthermore, we must strive to work together with the superintendent and staff to lead the district toward fulfilling the vision we have created, fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills and knowledge, citizenship, and personal development. At this time, Director Heidman, I ask that you take your oath.
I hereby accept the office of School Board Member of Independent School District 181 for a term beginning the first Monday in January 2023 and expiring the end of December 2026.
Director Spear.
I hereby accept the office of School Board Member to Independent School District number 181 for a term beginning the first Monday in January 2023 and expiring the end of December 2026.
And Director Donlinger.
I hereby accept the office of School Board Member of Independent School District number 181 for a term beginning the first Monday in January 2023 and expiring the end of December 2026.
Thank you for commitment to Brainerd Public Schools. And
Thanks.
welcome to our students.
All right. So this meeting is of the Brainerd School Board is being conducted in accordance with Minnesota Statute 13D.02. This meeting is being recorded. Access to the recording will be made available on the school district's website as soon as is reasonably possible. So we will move along to the approval of the agenda. Was the agenda amended? I can't remember. The amended agenda, but we just flipped the order to have you guys do your oath of office prior to voting on stuff.
Oh, great.
Seemed logical. I believe Director Heidman caught that one for us. So if we could get a motion for approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. I'll second.
Go ahead.
All right, so I have a first by Director Brecken and a second by Director Spear. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Aye. Yes. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now we'll review the nomination and election of officer procedures per policy 202 board organization. So I believe this starts, and Superintendent Hahn will keep me honest as we move along here. I believe we start with accepting nominations for the 2023 board chair position.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Director Boyles for our chairperson.
Second. We have a first and a second. Do we have any other nominations for chair? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of Director Boyles for chairperson for 2023, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Hearing no opposition, the motion carries. You're stuck with me for roughly 12 months.
There we go.
Moving on, Vice Chair. Could we get a motion for a director for the Vice Chair for 2023, please?
I make a motion for Sarah Spear.
And I'll second it.
We have a motion by Director Heidman and seconded by Director Brecken for Sarah Spear for Vice Chair for 2023. Any discussion? Any other nominees? Hearing none, all those in favor of Director Spear for Vice Chair for 2023, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Director Spear is Vice Chair for 2023. Moving expeditiously along to the clerk position for 2023, accepting nominations for that.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Director Dondelinger for the position of clerk.
We have a first, and we have a second.
Second.
We have a first for Director Dondelinger as clerk, seconded by Director Heidman. Any discussion? Any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of Director Dondelinger as clerk for 2023, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. And finally, we get to treasurer for 2023, accepting motions for the position of treasurer.
I make a motion that we nominate Director Ward for the treasurer position.
Second.
We have a first by Director Brecken and a second by Director Dondelinger for Director Ward to be treasurer for 2023. Any discussion? Any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of Director Ward for treasurer, please signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Director Ward is treasurer for 2023. All right, moving along. Approval of the designation of official depository, authorization of the use of facsimile signatures, authorization of the superintendent of schools or the director of business services to invest surplus funds, authorization of the superintendent of schools or the director of business services to approve and confirm grants, authorization of the superintendent of schools and the director of business services to execute contracts and work agreements under $50,000 as per Minnesota State Statute 123B.52, Subdivision 2, approval for authorization of director of business services and accountant to be delegated to electronically transfer funds for the district, and approval of the financial condition of the district resolution, which reads as follows, and I am required by law to read all of this, so I apologize in advance. Recommendation for approval of the designation of official depository. The resolution reads that Bremer Bank be designated as the primary depository, and American National Bank, Bank of America, Brainerd BN Credit Union, Crow Wing Power Credit Union, Deerwood Bank, First National Bank North, First Western Bank and Trust, Franzen Bank and Trust, U.S. Bank, Mid-Minnesota Federal Credit Union, Minnesota School District Liquid Asset Fund Plus, Neighborhood National Bank, Randall State Bank, Riverwood Bank, Wells Fargo Bank, Wings Financial Credit Union, and financial institutions identified through M&T Trust and Ellers Investment Partners be designated as other depositories. Recommendation for approval of authorization for the use of facsimile signatures. Resolution reads that the official depositories of the school district, said banks and depositories, American National Bank, Bank of America, Brainerd BN Credit Union, Bremer Bank, Crow Wing Power Credit Union, Deerwood Bank, First National Bank North, First Western Bank and Trust, Franzen Bank and Trust, U.S. Bank, Mid-Minnesota Federal Credit Union, Minnesota School District Liquid Asset Fund Plus, Neighborhood National Bank, Randall State Bank, Riverwood Bank, Wells Fargo Bank, Wings Financial Credit Union, and financial institutions identified through M&T Trust and Ellers Investment Partners be designated as other depositories, and here are requested, authorized, and directed to honor all school district checks bearing the signature of the chair, clerk, and treasurer. Resolution for the financial condition of the district. Whereas the financial condition of the school district dictates that the school board may reduce expenditures, and whereas this resolution in expenditures may include the discontinuance of positions and/or discontinuance or curtailment of programs, and whereas a determination must be made to which teachers' contracts may be terminated and not renewed, and which teachers may be placed on unrequested leave of absence without pay of fringe benefits in affecting discontinuance of positions. Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District number 181 as follows. That the school board hereby directs the superintendent of schools and the administration to consider the discontinuance of programs and/or positions to effectuate economics in the school district and reduce expenditures and make recommendations to the school board for the possible discontinuance of programs, curtailment of programs, discontinuance of positions, or curtailment of positions. Now we'll accept a motion for the resolution as read.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a first by Director Ward, a second by Director Heidman. Any further discussion or any discussion about the resolution as presented? Hearing no discussion, this is a roll call vote as it is a resolution.
Director Boyles?
Aye.
Director Brecken?
Aye.
Director Donlinger?
Aye.
Director Heidemann?
Aye.
Director Spear?
Abstain.
And Director Ward?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0 with one abstention. Resolution passes, I should say. All right, moving to the next agenda item, the approval of designation of official newspaper. The recommendation, designate the Brainerd Dispatch as the official newspaper for the Brainerd School Board business for 2023 as per negotiated agreement. Looking for a motion to approve?
Motion.
And a second.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Director Donlinger and a second by Director Spear. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the Brainerd Dispatch being designated as the official newspaper for the Brainerd School Board business for 2023, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Approval of official school district legal representation. This is also a resolution. Approval of the Rupp, Anderson, Squires, and Waldsberger, PA, as the primary law firm representing the school district, and authorization for the superintendent to retain other legal counsel at their discretion to the extent necessary to ensure the school district has adequate legal representation for matters requiring specific or unique expertise. I'm looking for a motion to approve the resolution.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Where are they located?
Their main office is out of the cities, but when we have legal counsel, they usually will come on site,
Okay.
so.
What do they do, Heidi? Or Dr. Hahn?
There's a lot of contracts that we review, so when we look at entering into business contracts, if we have certain legal issues that develop, for example, we might have a due process hearing through special education, we'll seek legal counsel, or any other piece that may increase or have a sense of liability with the district, we'll consult legal counsel.
Do we have them like on a retainer that you can call and ask questions, or is it by the hour?
They invoice us monthly, but we identify one legal
Like a set.
representation. Mhm. And we've actually been with them for the last this is the 6th year. So we have one main attorney assigned to Brainerd Public Schools, John Edison. So we've been very pleased when we've needed legal assistance.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll call vote, please.
Michelle Brecken,
Aye.
TJ Donlier,
Aye.
Andy Hardeman,
Aye.
Sarah Spear,
Aye.
John Ward,
Aye.
Kevin Boyles,
Aye.
all in favor.
Next is the approval of the 2023 Board of Education compensation. Recommendation, compensation will be at $4,800 per year, which is the current rate that we voted on last year. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, this is just a regular motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation.
Second. I have a first by Director Spear and a second by Director Ward to approve the school board compensation at $4,800 per year. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Don't bury it all in one place. Next item is the approval of board members' rights to employment as outlined by MSBA. New board chair MS 123B.195, board members' rights to employment. Notwithstanding section 471.88 subdivision 5, a school board member may be newly employed or may be continued to be employed by a school district as an employee only if there is a reasonable expectation at the beginning of the fiscal year or at the time the contract is entered into or extended that the amount to be earned by that officer under the contract or employment relationship will not exceed $20,000 in that fiscal year. This does include the board salaries. Notwithstanding section 122A-40 or 122A.41 or other law, if the officer does not receive majority approval to be initially employed or to continue in employment at a meeting at which all board members are present, that employment is immediately terminated and that officer has no further rights to employment while serving as a school board member in the district.
Motion.
Have a first?
I'll second.
We have a first by Director Donnellinger, a second by Director Brecken. Any discussion? And again, we have a lot of new board members. We just recently changed that $20,000 number. It was lower before, so we voted on it a few meetings ago to raise
Used to be
that up.
8,000, the recommendation from the state came to 20. So when you look at some of our board members have coached, I know we have a board member who's going to substitute teach. So it aligns to allow that.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye, please. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Readoption of all school board policies previously adopted. This is, as I recall, this is just a formality for us to ratify all ongoing policies. As part of our board role, we will continually review and vote on individual policies as they come up for mandatory reads.
Is this an every year thing?
This will happen annually as the board is seated and works through these.
So we go to this meeting every year.
Every January, we have an organizational meeting.
I'll make a motion to readopt.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Spear and a second by Director Donnellinger to readopt all school board policies as previously adopted. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item is the approval of the superintendent of schools being identified as the official local education authority, or LEA, for the Minnesota Department of Education for federal and state purposes for recertification.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion, a first from Director Donnellinger, second from Director Ward to approve superintendent of schools to be approved as LEA. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Here's the one you've all been waiting for. Next item is the approval of the second and final reading of revised MSBA Policy 213, School Board Committees as presented. Dr. Hahn?
We have actually, you spent quite a bit of time, I think, in the last week having discussions with Director Boyles regarding committees for the Brainerd Public Schools. So the second and final reading is adopting this policy prior to you accepting your committee roles. So based on the last reading, we have not had any other further input or changes. So the recommendation is to approve and allow you to move forward with your committee assignments in the next item on 16.
I'll make a motion to approve the second and final reading along with the committees as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Director Spear, second by Director Brecken, to approve the second and final reading of MSBA Policy 213, School Board Committees as presented. Any discussion?
Yeah, I liked what Heidi had sent out to us, because the old policy, the titles of the committees were kind of off compared to the new language. I don't know how we handle this, but I would like to see us add an addendum to this policy talking about the purpose of each committee. So if the community is ever, gazing through some of our policies, they have a little bit better understanding of what the committee does. And you also had included that in the information that you sent to us.
So what'll happen is the agenda for each committee meeting, it'll identify the purpose of the committee as well as give the agenda item. So it doesn't necessarily have to be embedded in that policy because it'll be a part of each committee meeting.
I think,
There's two
kind of
ways
like
to
what we
look at
did
it.
with the RSO thing, the idea was to have another document floating around that's not embedded in the policy, because then the board has to deal with that, right? To give
Correct.
administration the flexibility to alter those descriptions as necessary without substantively changing them in some way. So as long as I think that's what you're asking for, right, is a document that,
And those
so
will
that
be,
people in the community can understand the
and those
function
will
of
be
each of those
published,
things.
Randy, just so you know. So they'll be published just like our board agenda meetings are published now. Committee meeting agendas will be published, so that purpose will always be clearly stated.
Okay.
Now, does that apply to all layers of committees, or are you just talking about the school board committees?
The school board committees.
Because I think you might be talking, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you might be talking about every layer so that there's a layman's terms explanation of everything on this sheet somewhere.
You talking about the subcommittees or the committees?
Yeah,
the
the
six-
subcommittees,
just the
the
six
community
committees.
committees and the.
Okay.
How about the six?
So those 6 committees, when they're published with the agenda, their purpose will be one of the first
That'll be
things that are
part of it.
stated
So they
in that
meet
agenda.
they're on the open meeting law and they're going to be posted in the
Correct.
paper.
Correct, and the public can attend committee meetings. So,
Should be exciting. I'd sign up for one of them if I were you.
Okay.
So-
I just thought it was, because it was good information. I mean, it was great, laying out the purpose. I was kind of scratching my head trying to figure out what some of the purposes was. So, okay, so it's going to be there.
it'll be there and it'll be published with every agenda.
Okay.
You'll be published, Randy. Finally.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the approval of the reading of policy 213?
Aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Item 16, establish date, time, and place of regular school board meetings for the 2023 calendar year, approval of school board committee assignments for the 2023 school year as presented, and the approval of board representative assignments for district and community groups for the 2023 calendar year as presented. I believe all board members have had the opportunity to review all of these, and I appreciate all of you taking time out of your schedules to spend a lot of time on the phone talking about these. So first of all, the 2023 meeting dates, is there anything that we would need to address in there? Heidi?
Just that we've added another, we will have a board meeting at the end of the month. We've gone to 1 board meeting a month, but with the budget revision, the audit will happen this evening, so you will need to go through the budget revision. We've scheduled that for January 30th. So that isn't added, so we'll have 2 board meetings in the month of January. Otherwise, typically we do it the second Monday of every month. However, in March, the second Monday is during the spring break for Brainerd Public Schools, so we've moved the March meeting to March 20th.
Okay,
Otherwise, it'll
so
follow that pattern.
let's make a deal. Let's not have surprise meetings. Like, I have to be in San Antonio on January 30th, so what do we do?
As long as there's a quorum of the board can still take action.
Okay, so I don't have to be there.
No, because there's going to be times where board members meet, or you could join us virtually.
Oh, beautiful.
So
All right, well, I'll be in San Antonio.
we try not to have surprise board meetings, however, with the budget revision and the audit timing.
Well, it's not really a surprise, it's 3 weeks, but gotta. I have to keep my other job, because this one only gives you like $400 a month, and I gotta make a little more than that.
So then we all have the draft document that shows the meeting schedule. I think it's fair to say this is a living, breathing document that will be added to as we hone in on, particularly on some of the subcommittees and the community-based committees. But as to the board meeting dates, the school board committees themselves, so we can go through the assignments real quick here. So the various entities that require school board representation. So starting at the subcommittees at the school district level, the APAC, or the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, Directors Brecken and Spear will be board representation on that committee. Blueprint 181 Project Oversight will be Directors Dondelinger, Brecken, and myself, Director Boyles. Brainerd Public Schools Foundation will be Director Spear. Community Education Advisory Council will be myself, Director Boyles. Continuing Education Committee, Director Spear. Community Education Advisory Council, Director Boyles. Distinguished Hall of Fame Committee, Director Ward. District Advisory Committee, Directors Spear and Heidman. Employee Benefits Committee, Directors Boyles and Dondelinger. Equity Advisory Team, Directors Boyles and Brecken. Family Services Collaborative of the Lakes Area, Directors Ward and Brecken. Minnesota State High School League Designated Representative, Director Heidman. And the Paul Bunyan Education Cooperative Liaison, Director Ward. Moving on to community committees, City of Baxter ISD 181 Recreation Joint Powers Board. Director Heidman will be representing the board on that committee. The Interagency Early Intervention Committee, Director Brecken will be representing the board. And the Sourcewell Representative Assembly, Director Dondelinger will be representing the board. Then we have the committee assignments for the standing committees that we already have. Long range plan, or no, excuse me, these are the board committees that we just created. Long range planning and facilities will be chaired by Director Dondelinger. And the second board member on that committee will be Director Brecken. Finance and legislative will be chaired by Director Ward. Additional board member will be Director Dondelinger. Personnel and benefits will be chaired by Director Boyles, with the second board member being Director Ward. Policy and community relations will be chaired by Director Heidman, with the second board member being Director Boyles. Curriculum and instruction and staff development will be chaired by Director Spear, second board member Director Heidman. And then student support services and activities chaired by Director Brecken, and second member will be Director Spear. Again, this has not changed since the last time all of you saw this, but that is the full reading of all of those committee assignments as well as the published dates for the year for school board meetings. I believe we are ready for a motion to approve and.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Ward and a second by Director Spear to approve the schedules for the school board meetings and committee assignments and the board committee assignments and district and community assignments as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. And now, this is generally most people's favorite, the motion to adjourn this organizational meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Ward, second by Director Dondelinger. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The organizational meeting is adjourned with 3 minutes to spare. Nice work, everybody.
Nice job. So when do you guys anticipate that these move back to Washington? Is that this year? Or is it like a year and a half, or how's that
No,
go?
we should hopefully by August,
How long is it?
July or August, we should be back.
I'd like to call the 6 o'clock regular school board. Oh, do you want to take a break, Randy?
I'm going to take a
So
walk.
Randy's going to take a break to ease his back. So for the benefit of the audience and those watching at home, Director Heidman recently had back surgery, and sitting in these chairs isn't good for anybody's back, let alone somebody who had back surgery. So periodically he may get up and move around. And it's not because we put fire ants in his jeans or anything.
I'm kind of with them. I might just go a little stroll myself. Just think.
Sounds good.
I'm getting that. You hear the deal with that?
What?
Oh, I've already done all the training.
Oh, yeah.
So we can just. Kevin, I don't.
Yeah.
All right, I'd like to call the regular school board meeting to order, and we'll begin with roll call.
Kevin Boyle,
Here?
Michelle Brecken,
Here.
DJ Donlinger,
Here.
Randy Heidemann,
Here.
Sarah Spears,
Here.
John Moore,
Here.
all present.
Before we go further, is everybody able to hear okay? I admonished my fellow board members to project. Just when the heat comes on, it gets a little, last meeting we had some speakers. So first up is the approval of the agenda as presented and amended. This particular agenda was amended?
No, it's
Was
as
not,
presented.
right? Okay.
I'll make a motion, we approve the agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Brecken, second by Director Spear to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved. Next up will be public input. A member of the public can address the board during this time. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Complaints or allegations against students or employees may not be discussed due to data privacy. Complaints or allegations must be submitted in writing to the superintendent, to Superintendent Hahn. The Board of Education and superintendent will not converse with guests to address the topics discussed at that time. I believe we have one public comment. Mr. Olson.
Mark Olson, 12336 Thompson Road. I want to welcome all the new board members and the previous board members. And hopefully in 2023, we're going to move forward in a great way and make 181 a great school again, the whole district. I handed out these constitutions to each one of you guys, and in my comments, I think you'll be able to figure out why. Listen to this. I heard this about 10 years ago. Just because you believe something does not make it true. Put that in your spirit. Just because you believe something does not make it true. We as people have opinions, experiences, feelings, and we grab onto that and think it's truth. Because I think I can jump off a barn and fly, I'm pretty sure I'm going to fall and get hurt. I'm not going to fly. Because I think a boy's a girl, that doesn't make it true. Because I think a girl's a boy doesn't make it true. I'm hoping in the next year and years to come that we can eliminate the ideology that so rampantly, and not so much here, I don't believe, but so rampantly is throughout Minnesota schools and the schools around the country. I think the best thing we can do, schools were started for what reason? To educate people. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. I said that 2 years ago to the previous board. That's why we're here, to educate our children, correct? Of course. So that should be the #1 goal. If I got a couple more or another minute, I really am speaking on the strategic plan. I'm sure you guys have all read the strategic plan. It's outdated somewhat, but I don't think we need to spend thousands of dollars on getting a new one. Just upgrade the old strategic plan, and with the board and the previous board and the administration has already stated that their strategic plan wasn't even being used. You guys were operating under the plan of a building process. So the strategic plan wasn't even being used. And if you follow, I probably don't have a lot of time left, but if you follow the last couple statements on the strategic plan, I'll just read them. Implement priority-based budgeting process and providing budget approval in 2011, June 30th, 2011. ISD 181 will develop and implement a plan to increase overall number of Brainerd students attending the Brainerd Public Schools. And last one, if we would have actually done those things, I don't think we would be in the trouble we're in. So when you're developing the strategic plan, I hope we can keep all ideology and politics out of it. Thank you very much.
Ms. Sponge.
We have an added card. We have one more public comment. Doug Kern.
Sorry, running a little late today. Anyway, I'm so glad that you got a new board here, that things are, you guys got a lot of tough decisions ahead of you. And I just admire that. I know that you guys are going to do things the way that you think is best. But with that, I know that with the Page Amendment going to be being pushed through here in the next few months, and you've got the teacher licensure that just changed. There's really only one thing I can think of to do, and so I'm going to do this. I do have a full head of hair there. That's even though I wear the hat. So, Father God, I just thank you for giving these men and women wisdom in how to do your will and do the things that you need them to do. And I just ask that you raise them up to make solid decisions. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Good. Thank you.
So, Director Boyles, I have a question. Can we ask questions of?
No, by the virtue of the way we set it up.
So we could change that if we'd like. I'm not saying we're going to. I just want to
Yeah,
understand.
in theory, that's the policy as it's written today. That's how we operate. Yeah.
Should I ask the question about what Mr. Kern said? Did they change the licensing rules, or is it just up for adoption, or they're looking at it, or did they change?
There's some new teacher onboarding, I think is what you're referencing. So there's a new teacher training requirement, I believe. So the Minnesota tiered licensure changed 6 years ago now. So, but it's not a point for discussion, so typically it's not going to be discussed at this point. But it's something we can learn more. I think that's what you're referencing. So I think
yeah,
if there's more information you want to gain, we can.
It's fine. You
I
didn't
saw
use your
some
whole
stuff
3
on
minutes,
it.
Doug. If you want to talk some more, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, you want me to clarify it or no?
Sure.
Yeah, so the Public Education Licensing Standard Board, PELBS, what they did was last December, the middle of December, they went through a process all last year of changing teacher licensing. Now, in order to get your license, you have to be basically push the LGBTQ agenda from preschool through 12th grade. Judge Mortensen was the man who made the decision. Normally, the way that they do licensure change is they go through the House, the Senate, and the governor. They didn't do that. They went around that, and Judge Mortensen made the decision, I'd say about the 15th of December. So that's
Oh, it's a done deal.
tough decisions. Yeah,
Thanks again, Doug.
thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from the regular school board meeting on December 12th, 2022.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion by Director Spear and a second by Director Ward to approve the meeting minutes from December 12th, 2022. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consent calendar. This, for those that are new, this is just, it's in our packet, right? It's got a list of everybody that we added and subtracted and leaves and gifts and money and all that good stuff. I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Director Dondelinger and a second by Director Heidman to approve the consent calendar as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next up, we have presentations. First one up is the 2023 bond issuance presale report by Matthew Hammer of Ellers, assisted by Marcy Lord from Business Services.
Good evening. Welcome, everybody. I want to introduce Matthew Hammer. He is with Ellers. They are a financial advisor. In your board packet is the pre-sale report for the 2023 bond issuance, and Matthew's just going to walk through that document. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Yeah, so good evening, everybody. My name's Matthew Hammer, like Marcy said, and I'm hoping everybody can hear me just fine. I'm going to present some information around the sale of bonds that were scheduled to take place in February. The board authorized that issuance back in November, and it's a trifurcated issue. So there's three purposes. The first purpose will be the remaining authority in the district's from the district's election back in 2018. There's $2.6 million worth of authority remaining. And then the other two components were also communicated during the election, and there'll be no tax implications for these, as they'll be borrowing against the district's existing revenues through the LTFM program and operating capital revenue. There's about $3.8 million worth of LTFM bonds, and then about a $3.4 million capital facilities bond component of the issue. The issue is right up about not quite 10 million, 9,925,000 is the par amount of the bonds. We did provide a pre-sale report. There's a bunch of information in regards to the executive summary and information about the issue around the authorizing statutes, the terms, but I'm just going to touch briefly on the schedule. The board authorized the issuance back at their November 14th meeting. Tonight we're having our pre-sale report, which is outlining our estimates. We'll talk a little bit about those. The district will go through a rating process similar to the other issues. So both Marcy and Dr. Hahn and Ellers will work through that call at the end of January. And then we're scheduled to take bids on the bonds on February 13th, and then the board will award later that night. The bonds or the proceeds from the bonds will be available to start spending on the closing date, which is March 9th, is the estimated closing date of the issue. There's several schedules located within the pre-sale report. Right now, we're estimating slightly over 4% interest rate for the combined issue. Right now, based on where we've seen results come in early January, that number hopefully has quite a bit of cushion in it because we've started off with some really good bids to start January. So when we get to February, hopefully we'll have really good results to share. The voter approved component, there's two tax levies. The district already certified a levy on their taxes payable 23 levy for the first payment on those bonds. And that issue will be paid over 2 years. So the initial levy will be with taxes payable 23, and then the final levy will be in taxes payable 24. The other two components, the district will be utilizing their long-term facilities maintenance revenue and their operating capital revenue. We've structured the LTFM bonds to provide about 50% of the funds on an ongoing basis for the district to use for ongoing projects, and about 50% of the funds will be dedicated towards bond payments by the way we're able to structure by interest-only payments in the first number of years, and then wrapping around the existing facilities maintenance bonds that the district has. And then on the operating capital or the capital facilities bond component, the district has some existing capital facilities bonds that are scheduled to be paid off, and we're just issuing some remaining bonds over a 10-year period on that component to fund projects for the remaining projects as part of the overall building project. So with that, I can answer any questions folks have about the process, about the issuance. There's no action tonight. That action's been taken. This is just an informational report. And like I said, we'll come back in February and take bids the morning of February 13th, and then the board will award at that meeting on February 13th, that evening.
And for those of you who are new, this will be the last bond sale related to Blueprint 181. This is kind of the bow on the present. It'll be the final issuance. So any issuances going forward would not be related to that project.
Did Matt say that it's the second half of the bonds are going to go to pay some bonds that we have that are due?
No,
So
these are all new issuances.
we're not using those to pay past bonds off that are due.
No,
These are going to be spent on the facilities we already have. And
correct.
so is this all part of, this is part of the Blueprint 181 program?
Correct.
And where do we find that information?
So anything, we did have the website, there's a little tab on the website of all the pre-plans. And then with you being on project oversight, I believe, we'll try to get you all caught up to speed on where we're at with those projects.
Well, I just think for all of us new people, if someone asked me, be like, nice to be able to say, oh, they're going to put, Garfield's going to get a new, so someone might ask me where the 10 million bucks is going. I'd just like to have some kind of an answer. I could probably wing it. I could probably come up with something. We're going to get some more footballs.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Marcy or Matt? And then we'll see this again at the February meeting, yes?
Correct. And
Right.
to respond to that too as well, ICS normally does give some updates on where we're at with the projects at board meetings, so you guys should get up to
So
date.
we'll get up to speed. We're just starting on square one.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're on the tail end of the projects, the last project remaining is Washington, which is under construction now with the HVAC system and new lighting. And so really that's more of an interior. Otherwise, the majority of Blueprint 181 is coming to close. So then it's going to switch to long-term facility maintenance and capital planning, which will be part of the long-range planning process when we look at next steps.
Beauty.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Move
Take
on.
care.
Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate it. Next up is our esteemed archivist, John Erickson, with Brainerd Public Schools 150 Years presentation.
So we're actually at a very historical moment, believe it or not, for Brainerd Public Schools. So 150 years ago, in January, the city of Brainerd made the decision to establish the first school board for Brainerd Public Schools. So you are now sitting in front of the 150th school board for Brainerd Public Schools. That's pretty exciting. You are on a historical board. 149 wasn't as exciting as 150th. But the work of John Erickson, what we've asked is we really are going to spend some time this year celebrating what's taking place and what's changed in public education over the last 150 years. And so archivist John Erickson, if you get a chance before you leave our boardroom, if you really look at how the world has changed in 150 years, that's going to also tell you how education's had to evolve to keep up with those changes, and things are quite different. We talk about just even some of our parents that are in right now, when they learn to do math in school, how our kids are now doing math, even in elementary, is very different than what we used to calculate. Jobs that our students are being prepared for are very different than the jobs that we were prepared for moving in our future. So I thank Mr. Erickson for being with us, and just if you can give us some highlights of what's to come.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. We have up on the screen a tentative timeline for playing out BPS 150 years. This is tentative because we're still working on it. It's a substantial planning process because it takes us through the entire year, including the summertime. A point of clarification, January 6, 1873 was the first day of school in Brainerd Public Schools. Today is January 9, 2023. Brainerd Public Schools at the time did not have a school building. It was renting space. Eventually it did get space. If you look on the boards behind you, there's a little block in the middle that shows where the first Brainerd Public School owned facility, John, can you point to that? You're looking at it basically. Yes.
Which one?
It's the light one right to your left there. Nope, to the left, John, that's to the right. There you go. Up,
Down.
down,
Right there.
to the right.
Last one on that
There you
row.
go.
There you go.
You had Thomas Edison there, John, and he didn't have anything to do with it. We did name a school
I was
after
looking
Edison.
at the wonderful pictures you sent to us.
We did name a school after Edison, but that was a long time afterwards. The first school that we actually had, and this is something to bear in mind, I think, as we talk about Brainerd Public Schools, was the ground was donated by a railroad executive. Brainerd itself is here because the railroad wanted to be here. And so from the very beginning, we've been connecting the world through Brainerd. Brainerd Public Schools itself in the very beginning was limited to the district boundaries of the city of Brainerd. It wasn't until after that that we actually began educating people out, a long time after that, that we actually began educating people outside of the city boundaries. The city boundaries to begin with did not include West Brainerd. That was actually in Cass County at the time. And so there was a school over there that eventually we gained control of, now known as Riverside, but that initially was not part of it. We had our first public school on South 6th Street. That's where that little map indicates. The intersection of South 6th and Oak Streets. In other words, for some of the old timers here, Mr. Donnellinger, for example, where the Red Owl grocery store was, the first Red Owl grocery store. And it was called the South 6th Street School. They didn't work real hard at that one. We built it. We paid for it. It cost about $2,500. That was our school for the first probably 10 years or so. The next school that we built was Washington High School #1. That eventually burned in 1928, and we built Washington High School #2, starting classes in 1930. And that's the building that's there now and is being renovated, as the superintendent has indicated. That building is basically 100 years old. It'll last another 100 years because it's been very well maintained over the years and now is being updated. Just to give you a little bit more background, then I'll go through that calendar you see up there. First rash of building that was substantial building, and there's some pictures coming around that you'll see, were 4 grade schools. These were built at the same time with the same design, almost to the point where they were indistinguishable. Whittier, Lincoln, Lowell, and Harrison. There are pictures of those coming around. They were built in 1893 after the high school was built in 1884. We built a lot of schools. We put a lot into education in the very beginning, and we have continued to do that over the years. It seems like about every 50 years, educational facilities need to be substantially upgraded or replaced because they take a heck of a beating from everybody in them all the time. The history that we have is very complicated. It's going back 150 years. We've probably had, although there's no real good indication of numbers because they've not been kept track of over the years, 20 to 30,000 graduates over that 150 years. In the first years, the first graduates actually occurred in 1887. We had the high school at that point, and we graduated a class of 2, except we really only graduated 1. That's because we had a boy and a girl. The boy didn't finish his classwork, didn't turn in his papers, and accordingly, the boy did not get a diploma. So the first diplomaed graduate of Brainerd Public Schools, ladies, was a girl. Not only that, but her name was Sue Mulreen. And she came back in a few years and became a teacher in Brainerd Public Schools as well. The second class in 1888 had an exponential growth, 7, one of which was a boy. Now, you get a pattern here. The boys were probably working on the farm, more or less. There wasn't a commitment to education at that point. But on the other hand, the women got it. And they were graduating left and right. They were leading classes and so forth. So now back to the tentative timeline you see up there. We have in place at this point for celebration of BPS 150, what we call the exhibition. You see that in the first bullet point up there. There are 3 phases to that exhibition. It's an assemblage of 45 different exhibits at the high school. They're in the exhibit cases in the commons area right along the north wall of the gymnasium on the main level, and 2 other places as one walks into the high school. We will repeat, that exhibit will be up through roughly the end of March. Then we will substitute that out, which is a big task. We'll empty that out. We'll put in another 45 or so, which will be up through the summer for those who would like to see it during the summer and who are not with us at the moment. And we will repeat that again with the start of school in the fall. At the end of August, we'll begin another round of 45 and run that through December. That's a significant amount of work. It's all, every bit of it is volunteered labor. So phases 1, 2, and 3. We have a number of events that are actually coming up that we are participating in one form or another. The first one that's noted up there is the induction of the legendary Women Hall of Fame. And that occurs in the 1st of March, which is National Women's History Month. There will be 5 women graduates of Brainerd Public Schools who will be inducted into that particular Hall of Fame. A unique event will occur at the end of March, noted there, March 25th. There will be a Congressional Gold Medal. The Congressional Gold Medals go back to the beginning of the Republic. George Washington received the first one, and there have been very few of them granted over the years. The number that's used is 200, although I think that's probably a little conservative. This is going to be awarded to Lieutenant Colonel Hortense McKay, who was an Army nurse on in the Philippine Islands at the time of the attacks in 1941. She treated the wounded on the battlefield in Bataan and at Corregidor, and submarined out of Corregidor just the day or so before it fell to the Japanese. She will receive a Congressional Gold Medal. She's now deceased, so her family will be receiving it. These events occur in the Gishe Zibe. That is a great opportunity that we have because of the public's dedication of resources to our benefit and the benefit of the children of this district, that we can use that facility. With respect to the Distinguished Achievement Hall of Fame, which is not noted up there, but does occur during homecoming week. That's a different Hall of Fame. That will be broadcast into every classroom in the high school. For those students who are not actually in the 1,500 seat house of the Gishe Zibe. So we will be able to demonstrate to our children and to the public, including around the world, because those broadcasts go wherever people want to link into them. We have graduates who are in Southeast Asia. We have graduates who are in Italy. We have graduates in Japan, and wherever in the world there is a country, we have graduates that we have educated and sent out there. And we'll be able to connect with them through the electronics that we now have. There will be other opportunities for events of this sort. July 4th parade, we'll attempt to put something together for that. Homecoming is coming up. We'll try to enhance some of the features of homecoming during that week. I think very likely there will be some Veterans Day events that occur as well. And then lastly, Native American Heritage Day is noted up there. The county fair is another place that you will see talk about the 150-year history of Brainerd Public Schools. Now I'm going to take you through a quick slideshow. There are about 6 or 7 of photographs in here, which are photographs from the exhibit phase 1 that is up in the high school at this time. And with any luck, this will work. There we go. We have made a special point of trying to recover before its loss artifacts from Lincoln School, which is actually Lincoln School number 2, first one being in 1893, this one built in 1939, as you note up there. There are a number of artifacts that have been saved, this being one. Another one I will mention to you because it's very significant, I think, to many people in this room and elsewhere. Those of you who are old enough to know that there's an old gymnasium in the Lincoln School. It had a maple floor on it, probably had a lot of give and take in that floor for a reason that I'll reveal to you in a moment. The floor had an L inside a green circle built into where there would be a jump ball situation in the middle of the court. We were able to cut out the floor. So we ended up with about a 6 by 8 foot by 4 foot rectangle with the L in the middle. District staff, thank you, Reed, made that arrangement. That was not a simple extraction. We still have that, and that will become a centerpiece on the conference room wall at the Lincoln Education Center, which is a remarkable facility servicing largely SPED students in the district and beyond the district, an income producer actually for the district. It's a beautiful piece. There'll probably be some form of a dedication ceremony for that. This is one of the artifacts that we did save. Here's another one. That's the classroom flag you see there. The blueprint, and here's where I want to draw some attention to it. To the right on that blueprint, by the way, that's a facsimile of the actual blueprint. We have the blueprints from the 1939, Lincoln in archives. That blueprint to the right is the gymnasium floor I just talked about. On the blueprint, there's actually some language on it. We can't quite see it the way this photograph was taken, that says unexcavated underneath it, unexcavated. When the time came to demolish Lincoln, we found that there had been actually fill put in there. And the fill was bricks from Lincoln 1. They didn't haul them away. They dumped them in the hole underneath the gymnasium floor, which was not, therefore, part of the contract to be removed by our people now. And guess what? We had to cover that. We had to take that out.
This has been there 100 years?
Pardon me?
Had they been there 100 years?
Yes.
They probably would have made it another 100. We could have just left them in there, you know, I don't know.
Well, we've got a lot of good dirt in there right now, believe me. What you see here is the 1954 state basketball tournament trophy. I think that some of us have special feelings for this kind of a trophy, including our director to the far left here, who I learned today had experiences playing in the basketball tournament, not this particular one. This is Brainerd versus Bemidji. I want to point out one thing about this to you, two things. That trophy probably weighs about 50 pounds. It's made in an old-fashioned way with a lot of metal and a lot of heavy wood in it. It takes 2 arms of a grown man to move that thing. The second thing I want to point out to you here is on the right side of the newspaper you see up there, it says Lakers lose to Rochester 74-73, play here today. The significance of that is this is a playoff game for the Lakers in the NBA at the time, the Minneapolis Lakers. And on that team was Whitey Skoog. Whitey Skoog was a graduate of Brainerd Public Schools. One of our best. He was one of the inventors of the jump shot. The significance is he was playing in that game while immediately above him there's a picture of the Brainerd Warrior basketball team. And you notice that it says in the upper right-hand corner, Skoog Sparks 36-27 halftime Brainerd lead. That's not Whitey Skoog. He's playing in the NBA. That was his 3rd championship in the NBA. That's his little brother who was playing for Brainerd at Williams Arena at the time. So they were playing the same time. 2 great basketball players from Brainerd High School on the same page there. This is a photograph of the class of 1925. You can get a sense of how many people are in a class back at that time in life. The fellow on the left is Walter Engebretson. Some of you, probably very few in this room, would know him as a teacher at Brainerd High School. He taught American history forever, or world history, I think it was. He was an outstanding athlete and an actor in plays in Brainerd High School back in the 20s. Then he came back here and he taught all of his life outside or in the classroom at Washington. This is another picture of him. There you see him in the middle. He was an actor in plays on the Tornstrom stage. Well, there wasn't a Tornstrom stage at that point. There was no stage there. The stage was downtown in places like the Park Theater. We only got a stage after the Washington one burned down. And then lastly, on the right there is a picture of Walter Engebretson in his final years as an educator. This is a photograph of part of the teaching crew at Franklin. In about 1991, Franklin shut down as an educational facility in about 2004. There's a cat there on the right. We haven't figured out what the name of the cat was. We know who held the cat. What's missing in this picture is that there's a young girl in the lower right-hand corner. She's about 3 or 4 years old. Her mother was a teacher at the time there, and we were able to trace her down. She is now back here. Her name is Erica Parrish, I believe her name is. And we have identified her. If you go to see the exhibit, you'll actually see her name and her picture. This is a photograph of a 1930 actual playbill from the first play on the Tornstrom stage at the new Washington High School after the old one burned down in 1928. Notice that Miss Tornstrom, that is the Tornstrom of fame, and now Tornstrom Auditorium, was the director. Miss O'Brien was the director of the Fairies. If you know anything about that play, that's an important part in the play. Miss O'Brien is Miss Mildred O'Brien, who became Mrs. Chalberg, as in John Chalberg. And John Chalberg is the name of the theater at CLC. We have Ms. Tornstrom being the name of the auditorium here. Take that back for a second. John M. By Clothing Store might be one that some of you will recognize the name of as well. The rest of them are long gone. This is a photograph from the senior class play, 2 photographs in 1930. You'll notice the interesting way in which the photographs are secured to the paper. That's the way it came. This is a black photo book that opens up. Some of you older folks will remember how that used to be done, and those are originals in place as they were glued down in about 1923. We also have, in our archives, we have writing contest winners over the years, and in this particular image, it's not possible to read it, but you see on the left, Jeff Spear, 4th grade, Lowell School, 3rd place poetry, Mayhem in room 24. You really need to go and read that. I can't even read it here, but I guarantee you it's worth the read. It's like all, you know what, is breaking loose in the classroom for that poor teacher, and he made a poem out of it. It's really quite remarkable. This is an iconic painting by Bunny Humphrey, who is shown on the right. This was a gift to Brainerd Public Schools. It was in Superintendent Gross's office forever. It evokes all kinds of very positive emotional responses from whoever sees it. This is the original painting. It's in the display at the high school. This is the 1997 inaugural season of girls soccer in Brainerd. You see the names of various teammates there. Think about that for a minute. Those girls have now had 26 years that have passed since they were 18, do the math. Some of them may well be grandmothers at this point, but that's their first soccer ball. Thank you, Coach Harmer, for giving that to Brainerd Public Schools.
My
archives.
daughter on the bottom.
You're aging yourself
I know,
there.
that's okay.
And here we have one of our remarkable graduates, a member of our Distinguished Achievement Hall of Fame. This is Elsa Hosh Garrison. She is a Getty Images photographer who has done sports photography only throughout her entire career. She has been to women's soccer World Cups, World Series, Olympics, Super Bowls, you name it, she's been there. Not once, but 15, 16 times for each of them. She is one of the premier photographers, sports photographers in the country. She learned her skill as a Brainonian photographer on the football field here. That was her first learning experience. She went to the Dispatch from there. Steve Coles is her first mentor. He's still doing it for all of us. And look what Elsa has done. She's one heck of a wonderful woman as well. This is Bruce Carlson. He is a 4-star Air Force general, classmate of mine, 1967. In military terminology, only a 4-star can be referred to as general. Everybody else, 1, 2, and 3, is an adjective that is lesser than general. Brigadier, major general, lieutenant general. 4-star is the only one who can actually be called general. I can't list all of the assignments he had over the years, but I'll leave it at this, particularly for those of you who fly airplanes will understand this. I have one in mind when I say that, and that is that he was the commander of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the world's largest Air Force facility. He commanded that. Also the 8th Air Force, also others, but we'll leave that for another day. This is the National Teacher of the Year, Guy Dowd, and the year was 1986, and we have, Guy gave us the dedicatory plaque from that time. That's a picture of him, I hasten to add, in 1986 when he wrote a book about his experiences. He authorized me to use that one, that picture that is. We have had some construction going on at Washington such that all of us who have offices at Washington have been kicked out of the building. It's a remarkable building to be in at this point because there's nobody in it. And one of the things that's going on in there is that lockers on the 1st and 2nd floors, warning to the public, we've got your socks and we've got your love notes and we've got your pictures. We've got the glasses that you tried to say were lost, but you were actually hiding them from your parents by throwing them behind your locker. We got them. And here are some of your socks, ladies and gentlemen. If you're missing them, we've got them. And other things that we won't mention. But this is an excavation. This is an archival find, so to speak. We can't go to Egypt. The school board hasn't authorized a budget for that yet, but I will be asking for it to be sure. We don't have to do that because all we need to do is dig around in Washington. I can't wait to see what the workers over there give me next. That also came from Washington. We have 1 million pencils. 1 million pencils, at least 1 million pencils, and some calculators, some of which still work. And this goes back behind those lockers probably at this point 30 years. This is Merry Christmas from Mrs. Hurley. We have different pencils. That was one of the more interesting ones. Here we have Cindy Clow, who is iconic. One of the things we don't do in this school district, and probably everywhere in the world, we don't recognize people who are among us, who are iconic, and who are respected around the entire country. And they start here. They live here. They're among us. There are many such people in this district, and this Cindy Clow is one of them. This is taken back in 1983. Cindy, if you're watching, you still look great. I think I'm at the end here. So there are a lot more, but I've taken more than I should have of your time. I encourage you to take a look at the boards behind you over there. They address the first 25 years of Brainerd Public Schools. And one of the messages in those boards and those pictures is that every time something's happening here that's significant here, there's something significant happening in the world as well. And those pictures try to draw them in on a date-by-date basis. So you see George Custer there. George Custer and Little Bighorn was happening about the time we were starting Brainerd Public Schools, to give you some perspective. Thomas Edison was inventing the light bulb about the time we were starting Brainerd Public Schools. And then I guess I will end with this remark, two remarks actually. This is a basketball from about 1902. I can't tell you if this is the basketball that is being held by the little girl in the picture that's going around, and you can see it in the lower right-hand corner, a picture of the 1902 girls basketball team. 1902 girls basketball. We were playing intercity basketball. Think about traveling to Little Falls in 1902. By the way, a warning to you all, the first day of school in January 6, 1873, the next day there was a horrendous snowstorm. People died, cows died, trains could not get through because of snow drifting, and went on for 2 days. That's the kind of weather these people, our predecessors, had to go through. And the girls did it to play basketball in places like Little Falls. The unfortunate thing is, when Washington burned down in February 1928, the school board at that time said to the girls who had been playing pretty much all the way through, you can't play anymore. You can't play because it's unseemly for girls to be doing such activities. Too much skin, you can't see a thing in the picture, by the way, too much skin is being shown. And so that was the end of girls basketball for 40 or 50 years. The last point, in 1898, the Maine blew up in Havana Harbor. Remember the Maine? That precipitated the Spanish-American War of 1898. As part of the Spanish-American War of 1898, we recovered the Philippines in the far western Pacific as an American protectorate, and we kept it forever. We had men and women, but mostly men, stationed there on December 7, 1941. Over there, because of the international dateline, it was December 8. They were bombed. We had Brainerd boys from here who had gone to our high school, probably 25, 30 of them in the 194th Tank Battalion that was stationed there. That was the beginning of the Bataan Death March. That was the beginning of the end for about half of those men. Half of them didn't come back. They weren't killed in combat. They died in prisoner of war camps from disease mostly. Some of them did come back, and they had shortened lives because of it. None of that would have happened if we had not recovered the Philippines in 1898 as part of our taking over in the Spanish-American War. Now, I'm not saying that was right or wrong. I'm just saying the world is connected. We are all connected wherever we are. We're not isolated here. And when we send our students out, they better be ready anywhere in the world for whatever's coming. I hope you come and see the exhibit. We're going to have some guided tours during the month of February. We'll announce those later. We'll do that throughout the year. Thank you for your attention and for your support.
Has it been a whole year since we lost Walt Straka?
I don't remember.
He was the last one of them, right?
Of the baton?
Yeah. All right, so moving on from presentations, we'll now move into the action items. The first is a presentation preceding an action item for the 2021-2022 annual audit report from Mary Reedy and Marcy Lord.
So I'd like to introduce Mary Reedy. She's with Clifton Larson Allen. That's our audit firm, and she's going to go through this lovely PowerPoint which is how we ended the year for fiscal year 21-22. So June 30th, 2022 is when this audit report is as of.
Thank you. Yes, I know a lot of you are new, so feel free to stop me at any time. We do a PowerPoint just because it's a little bit easier. Hopefully won't put you to sleep. If you'd like some bedtime reading, the audit is great for that. But it gives some graphs and charts, some comparison year over year to see how the district is doing and how they've done in the past. But again, feel free to stop me at any time if there's any questions. So our required communications, our primary responsibility as auditors to provide an opinion on the fairness of the financial statements presented tonight. We do review internal accounting controls. We want to make sure that they're in place and that they actually work. So we do test those. We can't test every transaction. Obviously, the audit still would not be done if we did that. So we do some detail level testing and then some higher level testing. If anything looks out of the ordinary, unexpected, we do additional tests on those. We do test federal awards. You'll see this year that increased significantly. So we had to add a few more programs that we tested, but we do specific testing over those each individual programs. Significant accounting policies. Those are outlined in Note 1. So Note 1 will address GASB 87, a fancy term, just changes the way that leases are accounted for within the district. So if you look at that and compare financials to last year, you'll see that that was a little bit different from last year. So within the bound document, remember that there's management judgments and accounting estimates there. We do work with management to get that best estimate in the document. Special education aid obviously just doesn't wrap up by the time of the end of the audit. And then net pension liability is going to be your para and TRA liability. That does get adjusted each year as those get re-estimated. So page 4 then, no disagreements with management, no major issues with performing the audit. Financial statement corrections, we didn't have any. So what that means is as you're getting monthly financial information, it's accurate and you can make informed decisions off of that information. Page 5, so overall a summary of the audit results. So an unmodified or a clean opinion, highest level of assurance that us as auditors can give. One material weakness here, just preparation of the financial statements. They are a large bound document combining everything together. Management does review it to make sure that they are in agreement with the numbers, but we do prepare that bound document. Uniform guidance, that is the single audit that I talked about. The major programs here, Education Stabilization Fund, the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, Emergency Connectivity Fund Program, and Title I. So all of those were addressed and audited this year with an unmodified opinion on each of those. And one finding related to controls over reporting, just one report was not filed timely. So out of all of those programs, very well complied with federal requirements. We test minutes of legal compliance as well, and no findings noted there. So now we'll get into actual financial statement numbers. So general fund, far left is 2022, far right is 2018. So you can just see kind of the trend of your revenues and your expenditures. Down at the bottom, I have provided the actual versus budget, so we can take a look at those two. So revenues at almost 92 million, budgeted about 90. So revenues came in over budget about 1.9 million there. Expenditures at 92 million, those came in over budget about 392,000, so pretty much right on for expenditures. Other financing sources and uses, 963,000. A lot of that is the lease liability issuance that was issued during the year. So net change in fund balance, actually a positive 445,000, budgeted for a loss of 2 million. So you came out to the good of 2.4 million there with the general fund. So if you go up to the top graph, you can see your unassigned fund balance there at about 11.1 million. If you read your fund balance policy, it is 10% of unassigned to your budgeted expenditures. And when you work that out, it's 12%. So you're just above where your policy states. And then when you compare that to your actual expenditures as well, you're right on 12% there. Okay. Page 7, so general fund unassigned fund balance per ADM. Here you can see at 1,800. Your students actually did decrease, so this would increase with a decrease in the number of students. Page 8, a percentage of expenditures, as we talked about, 12%, just slightly lower than last year, but up from prior years, as you can see. Page 9, food service fund. So here you can see revenues increase significantly from prior year. So what happened to food service fund is in 2022, they were all free. The federal government decided to reimburse 100% of those and increased its reimbursement rate. So when you look at that, that was a significant increase from last year. So when you look at your budget, you actually gained 5.3, you budgeted for 3.9, so you were over 1.4. A lot of my school districts had this significant increase in budget. I'm just not sure of what to expect. Expenditures of 4.1, budgeted for about 491,000 over. Obviously, with food costs increasing, all of my districts also increased with that. And what's different about this year is the revenue significantly increased over expenditures, right? So the cost was fully reimbursed by the feds. So now what happens, the net change in fund balance, 1.1 million, all of that does stay restricted for food service. So you can only spend it on food service, and then you have a short amount of time of when you can spend that money down. So as you're going, if you see this fund balance decrease, it's actually a good thing. Food service is not there to collect money and make money. It needs to be spent within that area.
What can you spend it on?
Very limited items. We had a school district try and get new food tables, and MDE said no because they could be used for other items. So it has to be specific equipment, something within probably the cafeteria, but it's very specific on what you're allowed to spend it on. And you do have to get approval for that. Page 10, Community Service Fund. Here, revenue's up to about 3.3 million. You can see in 21 it decreased, but now you're back over the 2020 amount, so good there. About 74,000 over budget. Expenditures of 3.3, budgeted for about 3.8, so under budget about 376,000. So you did actually budget for a loss of about 498,000. You came in with a loss of 47,000, so positive 450,000 there. In community service, you can see, going back 19 and forward, it's all been negative, right? But when you look at each of those programs and what's in there, all of their fund balances are actually positive. So even though you're seeing negative, it's just some of that spend down of that money sitting in there. Again, community service isn't there to make money, it's to offer programs and kind of be awash as much as possible. Page 11, debt service fund. Here, revenues of 14 million, expenditures of 14 million, basically right on. You levy 105% of your principal and interest payments. You want to make sure that you're collecting enough to make those payments. If you have excess fund balance, the state will reduce some of your levy to make up for that. So in any given year, you can see a decrease or an increase. If you do see like a $3.5 million decrease, it's probably a bond payment there going out that was budgeted for and planned for. Right below that is your capital projects fund. Here you can see back in 2020 is really when things really started to ramp up. Going to 2022, so 5.3 million of revenues, 5.2 million of that was donation coming in this year. Expenditures about 41 million. So your net change in fund balance about 35 million there. You did issue new bonds slightly over 1 million. You'll see some more of that in 2023 as you guys approved in February that you'll be doing that. So you ended restricted fund balance with about 13.8 million there left to be spent. Okay. Page 12, so the sources of revenues coming in for the district. Here you can see federal at about 12%. Last year was about at 8%. So I talked about that significant increase there, which then did shift state down, but it didn't decrease by that much. So if you look at page 13, you can really see it's just a slight drop in state. That would be due to a drop in students, which we'll take a look at in a little bit. Other local, you can see increased. I talked about that, $5.2 million donation. And then federal funding, you went from 8.9 million to about 14.4 million there. So don't get too used to the federal funding, right? Food service is already back down to normal, paid, reduced, and then free. And now you start to worry about collections in there as well. So monitor that as you go. And then a lot of the ARPA money and stuff is rolling out as well.
Is the CARES money included in that?
Correct. What you spent would be in there.
That's the, when you go back up to page 11, and in 21 it was 400,000, and in 22 it's 5.3. Did you say there was 5.2 that was a gift?
That was from Sourcewell.
Sourcewell.
Related to the projects.
That's the Lincoln money? Yeah.
How come it was so low in 21? Because 23 or 20 is almost 4 million, 19 is 4.5 million, and then 18 is $4,000. So is that just kind of because of grants? Is that what goes in there?
So revenues or interest goes in there, miscellaneous, and then the donations.
Didn't we start collecting interest on bond money? That's what 19 forward, we would have issued the initial bonds for the capital project, and then some of that's interest.
And in 2022, you'll notice too that interest income was not that great. Actually, we had quite a few districts that lost money. So again, the 5.2, you only gained about 100,000 in interest. Okay, so page 14, I think we were on here. So where does that revenue get spent? This one gets a little wacky because you have so much into capital projects. So I like to turn to page 15, which really gives you the breakdown of individuals comparison to prior years. You can see that the site building equipment is starting to go down as well. Instructional increase significant. A lot of that is your federal money being spent out of that program as well. Okay.
Mary, Marcy, we talked about, you've talked about the fund balances in each category pretty much, but there's some restrictions there. Could you just address that? I mean, the amount of fund balances in each category, they can't be cross-categorical.
Correct.
I mean, could you address that, please?
Correct, yes. So within the general fund, I believe there's like 6 million of restriction, right? So that is money coming in that has to be spent on specific items. So there was money that had strings attached to it basically and can only be spent on certain items. And within the bound audit, it does break each of those categories out. You can compare it to last year and see how those fluctuated year over year. Okay. The biggest piece of those is going to be your operating capital and LTFM, which was discussed, which is going to help pay for some of your projects that you're doing.
Where LTFM is in the site building equipment on page 15. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead or behind. Sorry, back a page. Where does it show up on in that in those? It's under there.
Correct. Where you would be spending it.
Oddly enough, at the delegate assembly, that was one of the legislative objectives that was identified. MSBA is going to push on our legislators to potentially pass some legislation to allow money from LTFM to move into the general fund. It was some interesting dialogue about that.
What's LTFM? So I don't have to get my cheat
Long-term
sheet
facilities and maintenance.
Oh, got it.
Okay. Yep, so it's string attached. You can only do it for projects.
Yep. Repairing your buildings.
The government's good at that.
Well, that's why they keep talking about, you know, more pouring into education, and us as auditors and obviously business managers are hoping it's no strings attached, right? You got to put it in where your district needs it. But.
Right.
Perfect. So page 16, yes, here you can see just the categories. We like to show this just because once your capital expenditures kind of wind down a little bit, you'll really see that your salaries and benefits are the significant portion of expenses for the district. So when you look at page 17, you can see salaries increased significantly from last year, over $4 million there. Employee benefits maintained a little bit compared to last year. Of course, your capital expenditures and then principal and interest there. Page 18, average daily membership. So this is how the district gets paid for its students in the doors. Secondary, you do get a little bit more, 1.2 versus 1 on these students. So what really hurts, kindergarten is great, right? You're increasing, hope to keep those and see that funding increase. But then when you look at secondary, you did drop there. So by dropping there, you drop even more in your funding.
How far back do you have this data?
2000.
Right, because we're basically, this is a 12-year, 13-year trend, not a 2 or 3 year trend.
Mm-hmm. We do have plenty. I think we have 10 in the bound financials.
It would be interesting to see that at some point, just in the back of your mind, just because, again, part of as we begin to engage on whatever we're going to do from a fiscal perspective over the next couple of years, it's important that the narrative around the enrollment reductions in this district are not confined to a 2 or 3 year snapshot.
Correct, because if you look at 2020, right, and 2021 and 22, you're significantly lower, which is right about the time COVID hit. 90% of my districts lost again in student count this year as well. Very little actually increased. So just trying to get those students back in the door. Page 19 just goes to show you resident versus non-resident. So you did gain on the non-resident students and then lost in the residents. So then page 20 gives you your open enrollment gain or loss. So students coming in versus those going out. You can see your loss increased to 528.
And for those of you that are new, our district is how big? The students within are our resident students, but we have students who are outside of our district who come in that are considered non-resident. And then the ones that are in our district that leave to go to Pillager, Pequot, wherever, then they're considered non-resident at those districts.
So the percentages look pretty consistent. I didn't do the math, but they're kind of going together, aren't they? It's not like a big difference of, you know, the ratio seems like it's staying about the same. That's just open enrollment, is what that is?
Yes, correct. Yeah, open enrollment in versus out.
Are they only counted on this graph if they go to another public school system?
Correct. If they're homeschooled, they are not
Correct.
listed
So
in these numbers.
there's another aggregate number out there that will show some differences that are a little more drastic than this. This is just public school district to public school district. It shows.
So if they go to private school, they're not going to show up either.
I want to say private school is in these numbers.
So private school's in, homeschool is out, public school is in.
I thought homeschool is the only category that is not included.
It's the only thing that's not included?
What about PSEO students?
So those are claimed as our own.
They are
Yes.
still claimed as our own, okay,
And you get funding for those.
okay. Yeah, all right.
Page 21, here we just like to show the graph. Dark blue is the district itself. Light blue is going to be your state average, and then the green is your districts with ADMs over 4,000, which is what Brainerd is. Like to do just quick comparison here. For some reason, the 2021 green graph did not come through, but if you were to look, it's 1156, so it's just slightly under the state average, whereas you can see Brainerd average well below that at 758. And then a slight increase in 21-22. Of course, you're going to have your drop-in students, which makes your expenditures higher per student as well. I would imagine you're still going to be way significantly under state average in other districts similar size.
And is that largely due to the lack of an operating levy?
And just, I mean, I tell everybody, if you don't have the same business manager at every single school, what I may code as admin, someone else may code as something else. And we have, you know, said throughout the number of years that we're low in administrative staff. You know, if we get up to that state average, it'd be an additional 2.4 million we'd spend on administration.
Right, we spread that out to FTE count at one point, and that was like 18 people or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So said another way, this district, compared to the rest of the state, operates with 18 less full-time employees than most schools our size do.
Than the state average.
Correct.
Some schools are way over that, some schools are under it, it's the state average.
Correct.
Okay.
He said it better.
So this is expenditures, right? This is spending money?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Boy, I'm getting smarter by the minute, this is great. We gonna do this again tomorrow night?
Good thing you're on finance.
Page 22, then we like to just take your total instruction. So these are a few categories when you add them up. Down at the bottom kind of explains that to see where the district is at as well. You can see you're right on with state average and pretty close to other districts of similar size. Page 23, the district is self-insured, so we like to keep track of your self-insurance fund as well. You can see this year expenses just increased significantly. I know in other school districts it's the same, right? Couple years, a little bit slower due to everything, and then in 21, 22 kind of ramped up there. But really, when you look at page 24, net position is still pretty strong there sitting. You've adjusted fairly well for your claims and revenues coming in. So it was a brief overview. I didn't know if there.
Do you track on the health benefits, do you track whether it's a employee or whether it's a spouse and or dependents as far as the money that's being spent?
We do not.
We have records of that.
Okay, I was just curious because I know in my last few years of employment in the private sector, the vast majority of our health care benefits were for spouses and dependents, not necessarily the employee. So it was just a question.
Do you increase your funding then to make sure if these losses continue or do we just keep spending down the reserve? Thinking that was a fluke year, do you just kind of leave it the same and hope that next year's better?
Well, it's a balancing act. So when you look over the last couple of years, 17, 18 was fairly close, 18, 19 fairly close. 19, 20, and 2021, you really kind of gained ground, right? So 21, 22 didn't hurt that expenses. Now, if you go 23, if you go another year like that and you didn't adjust enough, I would say you need to reassess, right, into that next school year. And you should know fairly early how you're coming out in 22, 23, so it won't be a big shock, but.
Well, one thing that caught me real off guard about this when I was first on the benefits committee is on the revenue side of it, we have a number of different health plans, which, different staff can pick from. And we've been slowly, strategically migrating certain groups to encourage them to go to high deductible plans with HSAs.
Right.
But since we're self-insured, we can't just push everybody over there or deeply incentivize them because it also hurts the revenue side. So part of that, what you're seeing there, that dip in there is precipitated by more people migrating to those.
Oh, because when they go to your plan, you have less revenue.
Yeah, because their premium goes down, right?
You would think the claims would go down.
The premium
with it.
equals revenue for us, but we write the check for the medical procedure. We have some backstop insurance for large scale stuff like, over $250,000 medical expense. We've got other insurance that kicks in.
Health insurance is a tough deal.
But you said the words balancing act. There's a lot that has to go on there, and it's.
Mr. Chair, so can you tell us if COVID made an impact on the audit at all the last 3 years? I mean, what can you tell us about that?
Well, yes, your federal funding increased significantly, right, to try and put dollars back in where you might have lost for us. And then that in kind of how we audit, right? So we used to come on site quite a bit. I know one year we were basically remote, just kind of shut down everything. Now we're back to regular auditing, but I mean, you'll forever be changed pretty much. But audit will be probably, go back to more normal once all of the federal activity goes back down. but then the school districts have to find a way to replace that federal money if they, helped use that money to fund current expenditures.
Which is what we did. I mean, we backfilled a lot of things, which is why we were able to put money into fund balance. So it did help us.
Yeah, it's certainly artificially buoyed our reserve. Beyond, we look like we're on target, but we're not really on target.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't have been if you wouldn't have had it.
Correct.
Correct.
That food thing's kind of a, yeah, the same deal at the airport. The airport got $14 million and just had to spend it. Couldn't spend it on anything we needed, couldn't fix anything, you just had to build something.
Spend it. Mm-hmm.
And, well, I got some fancy buildings out there now. Better get an airplane. I know a guy that sells them.
So the electronic version is in the board agenda, but if you guys want a paper one, please let me know.
I'm just glad you went through it. This is awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Marcy.
Yep.
Anytime follow-up questions too are welcome, so just let us know.
All right, we'll move on to the action item, which is the approval of the 21-22 annual audit report that we were just presented. I, by a hair, have a first by Director Dondelinger, seconded by Director Ward. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Oh, this is roll call, I'm sorry.
Oh,
This is a good catch down there.
Michelle Brecken,
Aye.
TJ Dondelinger,
Aye.
Randy Heidemann,
Aye.
Sarah Spear,
aye.
John Ward,
Aye.
Kevin Boils,
Aye.
all in favor.
All right, the second item in the action items is the discussion and approval of a district strategic plan for Brainerd Public Schools by vendor to be chosen. Who's presenting on this, Heidi?
There's no, the presentations happened at the previous board
Yep.
meeting? So
So
really
it's
it's
just discussion. I believe, Director Heidman, you were in surgery that night that the presentations happened. You've had a chance to view them in the recording?
Well, I watched the meeting that night, but didn't remember a lot. But I think I had voiced some concerns to you prior to my having that surgery. And, I just want to have a nice, simple plan. Nothing fancy. It seems like the more words, the more complicated it gets. I guess I had a concern about when the stakeholders would be engaged, hopefully sooner in the process than later. In other words, making sure that a lot of decisions weren't made without stakeholder involvement. I'm not saying that that's going to occur, but it's always something that I was always concerned about when, working where I did for many years, get input from people and, before other people have made up their minds. So I think I voiced most of them to you, Director Boyles, and I don't really have anything else to add regarding that. But I did watch it.
Okay. And Director Donnelly, did you have a chance to review any of that?
I watched it. I talked to Denise today from Partner ED. I guess of the two, that's who I liked. I like the fact that they at least came here. That was worth something. And I think that, we do so much stuff with the School Board Association that I don't think it'd hurt to get a fresh set of eyes on everything. I'm not saying that they do anything wrong. I don't really have any experience, so I can't really say that, I've had previous experience with them, but I wouldn't think that it would hurt to get a fresh set of eyes. They're a young company. They're all experienced. The way I'm understanding this, we're going forward with somebody, so is our vote to pick who we're going with, or is it to approve the plan, or what are we doing? I don't quite understand.
Well, actually, the world's sort of our oyster. I mean, in theory, we could choose not to move forward with one as well by effectively tabling it or getting deadlocked in a 3-3 vote over who we wanted to do. So there's no obligation to pick one necessarily. That's the point of our dialogue, I suppose.
I see. I was curious about, I know there's going to be committees and and all these things that they're gonna put together. And does the board have any input on the strategic plan, or is it Superintendent Hahn is completely in charge of it, or, I mean, how does that, how does it go together? I mean, I watched the presentation and I heard what they said, that they're gonna put together community groups of 40, 50 people, and they're gonna narrow it down, and, I mean, who picks the committees? Is that a question for Heidi, or how does this, I mean, I don't understand.
I think it varies a little bit depending on the provider in terms of how those sessions are structured. I think kind of to your point, my understanding of Partner ED was that, they were going to, they were obviously going to cost a little bit more because they're physically going to come to Brainerd and facilitate those community sessions, which I would think would involve everybody from us all the way down to people in the community, kind of on semi-equal footing.
How much was it for the School Board Association?
26
Yeah.
was a flat fee.
Partner ED is 12.
Right, but then you have all their travel and all the additional
Yeah, you got
costs of them
travel.
getting back and forth with all of that kind of stuff, so.
Probably pretty comparable.
Yeah, by the time you got done, I mean, it's not going to be like one's way down here and one's way up there, which goes back to my unfortunate remark a few meetings ago about shopping in the bargain bin on Black Friday, but.
Well, sometimes that's all right.
So I think that's kind of where I skew too, to be honest, is I was looking for the one that was going to do the best job of really going out and doing the legwork with the community as a whole to really refresh the foundation of the strategic plan. The actual strategic plan is the nuts and bolts, but we got to really understand, what do we want those made out of? Do we want them zinc galvanized? Do we want aluminum? What do we want?
When I first heard that there was a strategic plan, I figured this was going to be some 150-page overwhelming thing that was like, what on earth are we doing? And then when I see the old strategic plan, it's a page and a half. It looks pretty easy, like Mark said, and some other people. I've had quite a few emails this week telling me to stick to the old plan. And the way I understood it is the old board kind of has already made an agreement with Director Hahn or superintendent, that we're gonna go forward and hire somebody. But I thought that the Partner ED deal was kind of a breath of fresh air. And I think the old one, being a page and a half, and from what I understand from either the School Board Association or Partner ED, that's kind of what they want them to be, which seems really simple for a government situation, because you'd think we'd have to have some policies and we'd have to have 122.8, 0.1, 0.6, but this deal is just kind of nice and simple and straight to the point. How do you come up with the goals for the strategic plan? I mean, who comes up with those?
So that happens when you really look, the first step is that stakeholder engagement. So when you look at the plan, just re-engaging the community in that conversation. So we're looking at community members, business organizations, internal staff, parents, graduates, really getting involved in setting what they feel the priorities are going to be.
You guys must have some goals that you kind of want to accomplish as well.
I think we have academic goals that we're doing in our continuous improvement process constantly. So this is really looking at collectively long-term and creating that roadmap.
Is it kind of a 5-year deal, like we're trying to set goals for where we'll be in 5 years?
We really want them to be actionable year by year.
Or is it, so it just moves all the time?
So if you look at the strategic plan, and the last one, 2013, one of it talks about teacher evaluation. Well, it's a statute that's been in place. So we've had that practice going on for a long time, but that was kind of new in the statute over a decade ago. So what's changing, and again, what's that input? We're really looking at what do we want from our graduates from Brainerd Public Schools. That's also part of that. So right now there's lots of competing priorities, and unless we set the strategic plan to identify what those priorities are, they'll continue to compete with one another. Where if we can have that collective conversation with community and internal and external stakeholders, we can become very clear on what that roadmap should be. And that's the bulk of the work. When you look at really engaging and having those meaningful conversations, they've talked about, when you're looking at community sessions, 15 to 20 community sessions, where people can come in, and then creating those focus groups and then really narrowing it down.
Why would you, I mean, I don't want to be weird, but why would you need 15 to 20 sessions? 3 or 4 get the job done? I mean, isn't basically public schools only have like a obligation to get kids ready for the world, make sure that they're smart, make sure they can read, make sure they can write? And isn't that kind of our core values?
So there's the academic piece of it, but then you just set through an audit report too. So when you look at setting budgetary priorities, setting your fund balance reserves, looking at how we're allocating those funds, looking how we're serving special education students. There's a whole comprehensive breadth of services provided in the school. We provide.
Well, this is the board's strategic plan as well.
Absolutely, the board's going to walk hand in hand with the strategic plan.
Yeah, it's our job to facilitate the creation of it, and then we turn it over to Superintendent Han, and she executes it
So you
with our
author-
assistance.
Yeah, you authorize the plan, and then it's really the leadership team, when you look at the work that's going to be done day to day to bring that strategic plan into action and fruition, it's going to be the practitioners and the administration that's working to.
It's finally one of the
Meet
few
those
things I've
targets.
encountered that's very similar to corporate world. where, You know, same thing, the board of directors brings down the strategic plan in cooperation with the CEO, and then
It'll be all encompassing, it'll be business plan, academic plan, community plan. We have facilities right now, beautiful facilities, from a performing arts center and an aquatic center. Well, what's our vision for that? You know, when we're connecting it with the community and allowing facilitating the facility uses. So you're gonna sit through rental agreements, all of that. But again, there's all these priorities right now. So really, what do we wanna focus our time and energy on, rather than to try and do a little bit of it all along? Set those priorities and let us get to work on the priorities. But again, we haven't engaged the community in a conversation about strategic planning for over a decade.
Was the community involved in the last one?
Yes.
One of the things that struck me during the whole presentation, both presentations, was a couple things. The partner ed, as you said, as was indicated, was 13,000 to 26,000. Their top was 26,000. And I asked the question, you know, how many take the full meal deal or just part deal or whatever? McDonald's hamburger versus the whole thing, you know, or whatever. So the MSBA obviously was a flat rate with the whole package. And it included lots of involvement with the community and students and board and, you know, everybody. The other thing that struck me was, and I asked a question to each of them, how many of these strategic plans have you done? MSBA had, I think it was 174 or something on that. I got it in my notes somewhere. And Partner Ed had, I don't remember, 30 or 40 or something like that. And Director Dunlinger, as you said, maybe, you know, it's good to get a good view of fresh eyes kind of thing. So that, I mean, you're looking at fresh eyes right here.
Yeah, we got a lot of them around here.
But experience means something to me too. Experience, and if you own a business, or you have a business, or you are going to hire somebody, you know, I'm going to listen to all of the aspects of each person, but experience to me is critical, and good experience. So as I checked out people that have used both of them, you know, both of them are, I think, would do a good job, a great job. I think both of them would, but I think MSBA has a little edge as far as experience and processes and problem solving and conflict resolution. That's the total package. So for me, it's MSBA is the one that I think we need to go to. And the other thing I want to say is, what did you say, Dr. Hunt? The last time was 2013?
2013 is the last time.
2013, and I've been involved in a number of organizations that, and I think somebody said it earlier, maybe it was Mr. Olson, some strategic plans land on the shelf and never see the light of sun again. Well, that's not the company's fault, or that's the people that manage fault, that aren't going to use the plan. I think all 6 of us or more, and the administration are saying, you know, we have a new superintendent, we have a new board, let's look at the future with a good strategic plan. And so in my opinion, that still is MSBA. So I wanted to throw those comments out there as well.
So is that kind of what we're doing? Is we're just kind of going around saying who we think it should be? Well, I can tell you what I think, then I'll just go ahead because I can't stop talking, is that the big difference I see between the MSBA and Partner ED, other than cost, other than they took the time to come up here, is Partner ED, pretty positive, is privately owned. And that's a whole different look than, you know, I deal with the National Auto Dealers Association, National Business Aviation Association, Minnesota Auto Dealers Association. They're all great people. The higher executive directors. Executive director from this one came from the, you know, executive director from the Builders Association. They're kind of in that world. It's a nonprofit world. And it'd be fun to get some people that think a little bit different. So I guess I would go with Partner ED. I like their attitude. Partner ED also offers school board training for all of us rookies, and they do it at a little different pace than the Minnesota School Board Association. I did the virtual thing. You guys are going to go Wednesday, is that what it is?
Tomorrow.
Well, tomorrow night for the short one, but then the other one is all day long. And they break it up into like 2 hours a month and can really dive in, and they're kind of there to ask questions as board members. And so is the School Board Association, and I'm not going to burn the house down if it goes to School Board Association. I just think it'd be fun to get a new set of eyes on things and maybe, you know, and I understand what you're saying about experience, John, but don't forget that they're ex-superintendents, principals, that's who they're sending, you know, teachers. It's not like these people that put this company together they're all education background, you know, they're probably just sick of education. They're not sick of education, they just went and tried a new thing maybe to make more money. I don't know why they left education, but none of them are just coming in there like me with a big mouth and off the whole time. They all kind of come from this background of boards, and so anyways, my vote would be partner ED, but I think they're probably both fine.
Yeah, the reason I lean towards partner ED is because they have the a menu that we can choose from. I think looking at our current strategic plan, I think we can build on that. I don't think we should totally throw it away. There's a lot of good information there. We've got Blueprint 181, where those people involved with that, you've got listed 8 objectives for facilities. So that can be incorporated into the strategic plan as well, because we've got these buildings. What are we going to do with them? Besides educate kids, obviously, we've got an aquatic center. We have the Performing Arts Center. You know, hopefully we can generate some revenue. But I think, you know, we've got 8 objectives. I mean, they may not all be particular right now, but and the other thing about Partner ED that I like is they do have a team approach where they've got a lot of different folks involved. Where it appears where MSBA, they have listed, at least in the rubric, one person that's going to be leading the charge. Now, she might be bringing in other people, I'm sure.
They have a team facilitator. She'd be the primary facilitator.
Yeah.
But they do have a team approach.
Yeah.
So similar to Partner Ed.
Yeah, and again, yeah, I mean, I don't think we can go wrong. I think you did a good job of narrowing it down to the two organizations. I just kind of lean towards that Partner ED. So that's how I would be looking at things.
I agree. I think they both would do a really good job for us. The 2 things that I think we talked about that I felt personally that were important in this plan were some sense of urgency, making sure that we've got stakeholder input in lots of different ways. And I think being able to include some of the existing work, so like the World's Best Workforce, that's a huge undertaking. There are lots of goals and priorities within that. And so making sure that that doesn't be an and also, that it's part of the plan. Otherwise, it becomes very hard to prioritize when everything is net new, as lots of folks know. So those were the key things for me. I think the in-person aspect of Partner Ed was really appealing to me, to be able to have people in the room facilitating conversations, gathering that input, helping us boil down some of the themes that we're hearing so that we can participate with alongside the community when we do that. I think that's important. I also thought that MSBA, they've got very skilled facilitators. I know have done so many of these that they've got a timeline kind of a little bit more compact, that would probably be something that we'd really be pushing for, knowing we'd really like to use this as a roadmap and direction for funding and for planning and for all of the things that we need to know what our priorities are, our top priorities are as we're putting together plans for this next year. So I think we can't go wrong with either one. I'm still undecided in my mind, and so I'm listening to you guys have a conversation about the best one for us.
Superintendent Hahn, if you had, I have to imagine, at least some dialogue with the executive team around these two vendors. I mean, when we were doing the narrow down process, do you have some commentary you'd like to add at this point?
No, I actually think at the last board presentation packet, we had all the administration give their feedback. Really, we moved forward with looking at 6 different. So if you look at all the firms and consultants that were researched, I really feel confident that any of them could have led a strong strategic plan. So I just appreciate the dialogue that's continued to happen. I would feel comfortable with either. I think they're both exceptional. They get to, like I said, my priority was engaging the community in the conversation and really prioritizing and having it being a reflection of our community so we can have a roadmap and start setting our goals. The last 6 years, we've all been about facilities, and we spent a lot of time with facilities, and we have excellent facilities. We continue on our academic progress with continuous improvement, world's best workforce, but really bringing that all back together again and having it be current to what we need. So I would feel comfortable with either. And again, if you go back, that was also we gave you a long narrative of all the administrative feedback of what they were seeking. But it's engaging and having that living, lifelike, reflective action plan.
Have you gotten any feedback from staff?
I really worked with our administrative team. You know, the staff, I think they've emailed board members and talked with board members as these discussions have been ongoing. You know, I just know it coming in as a new superintendent in July, it was one of the first priorities put forth for me was to look at engaging in that strategic planning process. So, but I think our staff are ready too. They're the internal stakeholders in the system right now as well, and really want to be able to have a voice in creating that roadmap too.
The other thing I really am concerned about too is that whichever we choose, I would like to make sure that it's open dialogue. Everything is open to the public, meetings, et cetera. All internal meetings with staff, et cetera, I think should all be open to the public. And I think I told DJ after the election, I said, you know, if we get this right, if we get this strategic plan right, it's going to make jobs easier. Because now, if we start straying, whoa, come on back here, folks. We've got this strategic plan, and I will not let it get dust. I'll guarantee you that. There's going to be no getting dust on it.
And actually both firms, MSB and Partner Ed, they looked at ways that they have a communication plan around that. So how do you make sure that every step of the process is being communicated? So they help work and facilitate that with us. So.
Well, to bridge off what you said, Randy, about the, you know, I mean, my take on it is the only emails that I've gotten from community members aren't about who to pick. They're about whether to do one or not, right? And here's my take on that. My take on that is I've been around strategic plans most of my professional career. The reason for that is human nature, so I hope nobody in the school district takes this the way it'll sound for a second, which is you never ask the goldfish to reinvent the inside of the bowl. If you really want to create a better environment, you've got to have somebody from outside that fishbowl looking at your fishbowl and helping you redesign it so that it's the best that it can be. That's just endemic to any institution. Doesn't matter if it's a bank, doesn't matter if it's a retail organization, doesn't matter if it's a government entity. Fresh set of eyes, to use Director Donnellier's point, is paramount. So that's why I'll be picking somebody tonight, and by way of explanation on why I don't think not doing a new strategic plan is an option.
Yeah, I listened to John and I agree. Coming into this meeting, I was leaning toward MSBA because I just feel like they do bring that wealth of experience and they get educational systems and they've done this. Then I listened to just what you said, Director Boyles, about yeah, you have somebody outside of the bowl looking in if you need to change that environment. So I'm kind of with Sarah. I don't have a strong opinion either way. I think both of them are very similar in the ultimate goal of giving us a good roadmap by using all the stakeholders' input. So I kind of being wishy-washy, but I think either one would do a good job.
I think the bottom line is that, and I know, Kevin, what you said is this has been going on for like 12 years, this drop in students, and that there's never going to be a strategic plan as important as this one's going to be, because we've got to stop the slide. Because if we don't stop the slide, the funding is really going to get to be a problem. We're already running thin, is what Superintendent Hahn told me, and I believe her. And how much longer can we expect people to come here for less product, right? We've got to have a quality product, and whether that product is our teachers, our facilities obviously are going to be beautiful from what I hear, or if that's the students coming out the door, the finished product. We've got to make the strategic plan that, and these goals have to stay on task, because there's a trend, and we can say whatever we want the reason for the trend is, but trends are trends. And I hate to do it, but you look at these huge companies in America. You know, Sears had 86% market share in 1975. They had 110 stories of the Sears building in Chicago. They have the naming rights now. They don't even have one floor left. What happened? Remember Ward's, Penny's, Sears? Kmart comes in, takes care of them. Walmart comes in and runs Kmart out. These companies that don't want to change is kind of like us. We've got to make some changes, and we've got to keep up with what's going on, or I think that the people are going to keep leaving, and it's a really important deal. So I don't know if the decision to who to hire is that important, but the actual plan has got to be spot on, and we got to get after it and try and turn the tide, don't you think? I mean, that's what I think.
I agree with you totally. That's why I think experience is so important. This plan is critical for the advancement of our district. And I will not let the dust set on a plan too, no matter what organization is decided. And so when you say how critical it is, totally agree. And that's why I want somebody that has been through the ups and downs of all education. Because there's a lot of ups and downs of education, having experienced that for 34 plus years. And so, to me, that is critical. Thank you for saying what you said, because that weighs even more on my decision.
You know, I find that school board association a little bit unusual. I went to the phase 1 training live, and I asked them, because they said that in like 1980, 1975, that 24% of people that went to college went to be educators, and now it's down to 4%. And there's a 400,000 teacher shortage in the United States. And so I asked the school board association, I go, well, do you survey people? Have you surveyed the teachers? Have you found out what the problem is? All right, you mean, because you are the school board association. You know, I would hope that you're giving me some resources to help us with this problem. And they looked at me like what are you talking about? The union does that. So-and-so does that. So I instantly, maybe, John, maybe you're right. I kind of formed an opinion on them, that they're just going through the steps because they've been doing it so long, and they know what they're doing, and they're not going to change their program, and this is their training, and this is what you're going to do. And so maybe I've just got a bad attitude from a couple things I saw, but I was a little surprised when obviously there's an issue, and the stakeholders like that who have the resources aren't addressing it. Seemed odd to me, but I'm a little odd, as you probably know. So, but what do we do?
Mr. Chair, I'll move to, just to expedite this a little bit, this process, I'll move to hire the MSBA organization to do our district strategic plan.
I'm going to second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Ward to hire MSBA and a second by Director Brecken. And I would say, much like really, most of us, I think everybody came in reasonably open-minded, and it's been a good dialogue. I think for a board with a collective 3 years of experience among the 6 of us, we're off to a pretty good start. What I would say is I have to work through my own biases on pretty much anything, anytime that I'm evaluating something, and I have a strong bias towards disruptors, innovators, free thinkers, and when people in the private sector come in and look at the public sector, that has some appeal to me. So I had to kind of leave that at the door. And when I did leave that at the door, then I felt like I was able to look at these two sort of side by side a little bit more objectively. And what came out in the dialogue tonight is John made some really strong points. But on the other end of it, what I really came away with, what tilts me into the partner ED category, is that it feels like what they're going to provide us is more malleable, more custom to what we need it to be, where I think MSBA would be prone to come in and use a blueprint. And I don't like blueprints. I like the idea that we're a very unique animal in the world of Minnesota school districts in the sense of 517 square miles, one of the largest school districts outside of the Twin Cities area in the state. And that creates a lot of challenges. I think our community is a lot different than a lot of these other communities when it comes down to engagement and trying to go through that process and be fair to all the walks of life that have emerged or existed previously. They're certainly different than 2013, I can tell you that. And I think that those in-person sessions, to me, would be critical in the process of drawing that out from the community up through the staff, up through the administration, and I guess to the board members too. But I think the community and the staff are absolutely the priority in terms of understanding what they're looking for. That's my take on it. But I'll go ahead and pile on with everybody else. We can't go wrong. We can't make a bad decision tonight. I just think we should make sure we make the best decision tonight.
I just want to go to the other training.
So with that in mind, I mean, we can certainly try a vote on the motion that's been.
So how's the procedure work? So we go around and we vote, and let's just say that John and Michelle have the 2, and then 4 go against. So then someone else makes a motion to go with partner ED, and we end up going 3-3. We just keep going till we figure this out?
Yeah, or it ends up tabled if nobody
Is that
moves.
how it works?
So right now, your current motion is MSBA.
Current motion is to hire MSBA.
So you can.
Further discussion.
I know they said as part of their plan that it is remote. Is there the possibility that they would come on site for those stakeholder meetings?
That would be a question to bring back. The majority of their work they do is facilitated virtually, so they can access both platforms. You know, Partner Ed said they'd be in person, but they'd also allow that virtual.
Partner Ed said they'd send 3 people up here, right?
The other thing with MSBA, I just think they use a cookie cutter approach. I mean, I've looked at the examples they've given us, and they all kind of look the same. And I know Director Hagelin had made the comment at a previous board meeting that the cookie cutter approach was something that he was not in favor of. Obviously, he's not here, but I thought that was a great thought process and statement that he made.
Any further discussion? All right, take a stab at this. All those in favor of hiring MSBA as the provider for the strategic plan for Brainerd Public Schools as selected by the board, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
I said aye.
Okay, am I seeing 2? Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye. So the motion fails 4-2.
Okay, I'll make a motion to hire partner ED.
Second.
Have a motion by Director Heidman, second by Director Donnellinger to hire partner ED as the provider for the strategic plan for Brainerd Public Schools. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-2. We have our first split decision as a board.
It didn't take us very long, did it?
No, but we didn't, there was no way to go wrong with this.
Yeah. So I think just with that choice, then what we're gonna need to do is then develop a contract with Partner Ed, and I think that's where there's gonna be more discussion, because they did give you a menu of options. So I think moving forward, just know that that's gonna be something we need to look at in order to start that work moving forward.
So you want to worry about it later, or I've got the menu with me.
No, we'll have to have
I
them
don't know what a
draft.
portrait of a graduate is.
So there's a link of,
Oh, you're talking about the
side-by-side
portrait of
comparison.
graduate piece.
Yep,
Yeah,
so there's a link of it in there.
yeah. I remember her presenting on it.
So what we can do is have a draft generated. It'll have to go back for, you've already approved, so then it'll go to the clerk. But we'll have a contract developed and reviewed.
I think that's why, to be honest, that's why I thought the pricing was much closer, because I'd already kind of baked that into my thinking.
We take a 2-minute break.
All right, we're going to take a recess for 2 minutes.
Okay.
Not sure Robert's Rules of Order allowed for that, but we'll figure that out later.
No problem. Sorry to hold you up, Tim.
I could. I'd like to reconvene the board meeting, please. Everybody would take their seats again, please.
It's not always up to me.
And we're back. All right, so our next item up, action item up, would be the approval of the adjustment to the 2023-2024 school calendar as presented. And the soulful stylings of Director Murtha.
Full of soul that I am. We have to correct 2 errors in the publishing of the original edition of the 2023-24 school calendar. So what we need to do is convert December 21st to a contact day and May 31st to a student contact day. That will bring us up to the contract level number of days that we're required to have for instruction during the year. The one consequential change then becomes certified staff will be returning then on Monday, June 3rd for their last half-day checkout morning as the contract ends. I think we were just a little too excited to end before a weekend and not have to carry it over, but 3 years out of 7, it's a thing that occurs when we build calendars. We just got a little excited. So I apologize for the error in the production of the document, but the adjustments are fairly simple, and I think we're doing it in early enough time that it's not going to be an inconvenience.
Tim, would you give us those dates again, please?
December 21st, which is a Thursday.
December 21st, that's an ad?
That's an ad. So what we had done was we had built one too many days into the winter break, and we had ended school 1 day too soon, is what we did. Those were the mistakes that we made.
And what was the other one?
May 31st. It's a Friday.
Is that Memorial Day weekend?
No, it's the
No,
weekend
that
before.
should be the previous one.
Okay. And that's an ad also?
Correct. That brings us back up to 169 contact days.
And the June 3rd, half day for certified?
Correct.
What was it prior to that? What was the change there?
It would have been May 31st, that Friday.
All right, I got you.
With that approved calendar, we were 2 instructional days short from what was approved by the board. So they overlaid calendars and had that.
Thank you for catching that.
Yeah.
I'm not the one who caught it, so I'm not going to take credit for it.
Thank you to whoever caught it, and I'm sorry you have to be the bearer of that news, I'm sure.
My department is responsible for the generation of the primary document before it goes to all the other stakeholders. This is an exercise where clearly we trust each other. We trusted that they would catch it because they always look at it. They trusted that we were right because we're always right. So a lot of trust, not a whole lot of accuracy. We apologize.
Our union groups had reviewed it too, so when you look at EMB, who comes in as part of the calendar discussion, they too had looked at it. So now with these adjusted dates, they too feel that they're appropriate based on the early notice and how they tie in. And it's not the first time they've had to come back for a half day after that graduating class.
We returned all the stakeholder groups from the original to make sure that everyone was on the same page.
Okay.
So
I'll make a motion to approve the adjustment to the calendar.
Is that all we're approving right now, is the adjustment of the calendar?
correct. So the calendar as presented and that's linked into your document, that's what we're approving here.
Okay. I just have a question. Is this assuming that snow days are e-learning days?
This makes no assumption of change of policy.
Okay.
Okay. If we were to change the policy regarding e-learning days versus snow days, it would depend upon how it was changed, whether or not it would affect the calendar or not. So you can't, there's no way to anticipate here. So the best thing that we can do is produce a calendar, approve a calendar, and then, as you know, we're collecting feedback from the community and from staff. Once that data is collected and brought forward and the decision is made, then we can examine whether or not as a consequence we have to make any other changes to what we do.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question. What year did you take, did Christmas and Easter come off the calendar?
This would have been the first year that we produced a calendar that makes that recommendation.
And what was the benefit of that?
The benefit of that, or the intent of that as an administrative recommendation, was to follow the school board's guidance based on the July 19th letter of its commitment with equity, and then the definition of inclusion is brought forward by the committee that does the equity task force. So the intent here was to make sure that we're recognizing that we're a diverse community with many different beliefs, and that we wanted to make sure that we weren't creating a condition where we were excluding someone unnecessarily from feeling a full participant in the community that's Brainerd Public Schools.
So they did get a winter break, though. You just called it Christmas break. So you feel that they didn't feel like they got the break? Or
I think by
you're
changing
confusing
that
me.
off, I think by making that change, what you're doing is honoring the fact that not everyone practices Christmas.
But it's a national holiday.
It is a federal holiday.
Yes, it is. I find it unusual, Tim, or Mr. Murtha, that John just sat over there and showed us 150 years of history and all the things we have to be proud of about Brainerd. And for some strange reason, we find it important enough to bother the people that pay the taxes of this community to take this off the schedule because of, I've never heard anyone be upset because it's Christmas, and I'm quite certain there probably are people that are upset because it's Christmas. But I don't know. I think it's a nothing burger. I don't think you've accomplished anything except upset people. And I think with the situation we've got with the dwindling students, we need to start looking at this. I don't think it's worth arguing about tonight, but I wanted to bring it up. And I think it's something that will be coming up in the future. And I think it's worth talking about. I mean, we're a Christian country built on Christian values. We may not be today. Not saying everyone's a Christian, but, if you and I took a job in Saudi Arabia, we probably wouldn't be upset that Christmas wasn't on the schedule. If we were in Israel, I don't think it'd be upsetting that Christmas wasn't on the calendar. And that's just what this country was built on. We've had schools for 190 years. Brainerd's probably, this is the 150th year. So I'd say for 149 years, they had Christmas break, and this is our first year. So we're really setting the standard, aiming high. So I just wanted to let it be noted. And I can second the motion if you'd like to approve the calendar. But I think that these are the kind of things that are holding us back.
Duly noted.
So there is a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion by Director Spear, I believe, and a second by Director Dondelinger to approve the adjustment to the 2023-2024 school calendar as presented. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have a question, please. Mr. Mercer, has the union, I thought the union had to also agree on a change of calendar, don't they?
Yes, through meet and confer, the document was shared with
Meet and
unions.
confer met and was approved at that point?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next is the approval of the first reading of revised MSBA policies as presented. Angie Bennett.
Good evening. You get to listen to me for a couple action items tonight. I will start with some new board policies for review. These policies are being reviewed according to our regular schedule, so they're not being brought forward due to any major revision. But there were some changes to the MSBA model policies, just mostly language, not a lot of the core structure of the policy was updated, but wanted to bring those forward for review. So the first one is 406, public and private personnel data. Again, as I said, a lot of the definitions and the main core sections of the policy are intact. There is just some additional language added, some changes to some of the statutory and the regulation numbers, those types of things, and just a little bit of the cleanup in the language. If anyone has any questions about that policy.
Are we going to approve these one at a time or all three? Chairman, do we approve these all three at a time?
They're listed as bullets like this, right? We approve them as a batch, don't we?
Yeah, perfect.
They're all up for first reading.
Yep. So it's just approving the first reading, but I'm welcome to gather recommendations for changes. At this point is when I can receive some input to go back and look at some different things, to make additions, deletions, those types of things. Any questions on the public and private personnel data? Okay. The second bullet is about the release form. This is just a cleaner version of what we already had in place. Just thought it looked a little nicer, so we're threw that in there. The final bullet is the family medical leave policy. Again, a lot of the changes in here are bits and pieces of language. The main change is removal of the expanded Family Medical Leave Act that was under the Families First Coronavirus Protection Act. That has since expired, so I'm just removing that subsection. There is a little bit of language change, and again, the statutory changes, just titles. That's about it.
Motion.
We have first.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Dondelinger, second by Director Spear to approve the first reading of MSBA policies 406, 406.1, and 410. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries.
Super. All right, the next one is the second and final reading of MSBA Policy 623. We talked a little bit, or not 623, 404. Talked a little bit about this last month, just some changes mostly to align with our current procedures for submitting background checks. We no longer do the paper to the BCA versus now where we're using an electronic vendor. So I had to change some terminology and such.
I make a motion, we approve the 404 employment background checks.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Brecken, seconded by Director Dondelinger to approve the second and final reading of MSBA Policy 404 as presented. Any further discussion?
I just have a question. Angie, is basically the language that we're changing, does that fit into more of how we operate as a school district and not necessarily so much as far as the MSBA giving us that information?
Correct.
Okay.
As far as the employment background checks, yeah, they have kind of a standard model policy per se, and that was very paper-based where we would fax in something to the BCA. We have since moved to a different vendor, which streamlines the whole procedure.
So this is more our procedure?
This is us. Yep.
Yep, cool. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Boyles, Vice Chair Spear, members of the board, Superintendent Hahn. I'm excited to have the second reading of our school board policy 623 on summer school instruction. I received no comments or questions from the first reading. We had pretty minimal changes to this, really just to emphasize that this is about summer school instruction broadly. We currently do not have any mandatory summer school programs.
So is this about how you decide who should go to summer school? I mean, I was kind of reading where it used to be, I was reading the red line, where it used to be that everyone come up with kids that needed to go, and now it's more, I mean, what is the big change?
Yeah, there aren't a ton of changes to this. Really, if you are looking at the policy, we added in some pieces around summer school instruction that we will present to you annually as board members about summer school, so about who attended, who the staff were, those sorts of things. Really right now we determine who qualifies for summer school at that local building level in consultation with our teachers, parents, those sorts of things.
Cool. Do we ever get parent pushback
on
a child? I mean, I remember, I think it was the October meeting I listened to, or either it was the November, and Tim talked about we need to get proficiencies up. I think he repeated it more than once that night, which I wholeheartedly agree with.
Absolutely.
So if there's kids that are falling behind or are still behind because of COVID and other stuff, can we recommend that these children come to summer school, and then do we get pushback? How much pushback do we get from parents?
Yeah, absolutely. We make those recommendations to parents and we really sit down with them, go over their students' proficiency, talk about the benefits of summer school. With this policy, because like I said, we don't currently mandate everything, we really want that to be up to that parent's, decision for their family and for their child. But absolutely, we really talk about the benefits of summer school, why we think it's necessary for that child. Absolutely, there's sometimes, parents that decline it, but generally parents are really supportive of us having that conversation with them and really making sure that they're aware of where their child is at.
Do we have a track record then of telling the parent, hey, these many students were in summer school last year, this is what they've done, this is how they've improved? Is there a track record we give to parents then?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That would happen more at the local building level on whether they are sharing that data on that. We definitely collect progress monitoring data at the beginning of summer school and then at the end of summer school to measure that progress for students. And that's an important piece for us as we do programming.
Because I personally believe of the 3 proficiencies, reading, writing, and math, reading is obviously, it's got to be number 1.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, if these K through 3, if we can get them to read proficient at grade 3, they are going to be set up for success for the rest of their school. If they're not, if they can't read, they can't do math.
Definitely, and obviously all the research really shows that. One of the blessings of the COVID funding too is that we've been able to pay for transportation for students to summer school, so that's something that we hope to continue this year too. Yeah.
Cool.
Would you repeat that about the transportation?
We've been able to pay for transportation for students to attend summer school.
Does it say in the policy that, we're required to provide? I thought I read that it said we're required to provide.
Yeah, if we make it mandatory, we are required.
If we make it mandatory.
Yep. Right now it's optional.
It's not mandatory, it's optional for us.
Exactly.
I have one more question, and I'm just new, so I'm just asking all these crazy questions. Do we hold kids back, or that's what we used to call it, failing, whatever you want to call it, and then give them opportunities to go to summer school and tutor them to get them caught up? Or do most kids just get pushed through the next grade? Is it up to the parents? I mean, I remember when we were, 50 years ago or something like that, it was different. Is that, you hear all these rumors and, they just push everybody through, and I don't really know if that's true, and I don't like to believe things until I hear from someone like you.
Yeah, Director Murtha is really the expert on our retention promotion policy, but we do have a board policy in place on that.
We do have a board policy. The purpose is to give latitude to families to make a choice for themselves. So a principal may make a recommendation for retention, but it's actually quite rare. Holding a kid back starts damaging the relationship between the kid and the school. At some point, what the kid starts learning is, I hate school. I'm not with my classmates. I'm the biggest kid in the room, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep, I believe that.
We keep the door open if that's a family's desire, but it would be very rare for us to recommend it. So we want to keep that flexibility in place.
So everybody that's my question. Well, I'd make a motion to approve this deal, if you guys need one.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Dondelinger and a second by Director Spear to approve the second and final reading of MSBA Policy 623 as presented. Any further discussion? Director Ward.
Thank you. There's been a lot of discussion about student achievement locally and nationwide due to COVID. And there's also been some discussion about expanding summer school and even, which is amazing, even fiscally applying dollars to it. So does this policy allow, and maybe if that happens, there might be some requirements or strings, as some people might call it, or whatever. Does this policy allow for additional funding for summer school for those kids that really need it due to COVID, with maybe some attachments of some other requirements or whatever? Are we okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a big pot of money for summer school that's been provided from our CARES funding, so we'll keep spending that and keep really focusing on our programs because, like you said, we really need to make sure that we've had our students be able to accelerate their learning that was lost due to the pandemic.
And I'm talking more on the state level than the Fed level. So if the state legislature decides that they're going to expand financial input to districts or resources to districts for that, this policy can go along with any of that kind of?
Yes, yep,
Okay,
it
very
can.
good, thank you.
And then if we were to mandate anything, we would bring that back to the board. The board would have to approve that.
All right.
Yep.
And that, Director Ward, that'd be a great example of one case where, you know, the utilization of those CARES dollars to create something that didn't exist before.
Right.
I actually would support it because the money expires, right, in these yearly increments. What we've also tried to stay away from, though globally, is building infrastructure or programs using the CARES money that we won't be able to sustain once it's gone. But in this case, it's specifically there for the purpose of throwing everything we can at that gap.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, okay. Cool. That was a great comment. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Back.
I'm like a bad penny. I always turn up. I'm here to bring forward the second reading of Policy 425 on staff development and mentoring. There have been no recommended changes to the text since the first policy reading in December. So I'm prepared to answer any questions that you have. For members who are new to the board and weren't here when the first reading occurred, the red text is MSBA board policy recommended text. The blue text is text that was inserted that's unique to Brainerd. And this came with collaboration with the teachers on the DSDAC when we put this policy change together.
So Tim, this is brand new policy, right?
It's brand new policy. You're going to see a lot of similar language in policy 619, which for some odd reason historically someone thought that was the right place to put a staff development policy. What 619 was an archaic staff development policy that required you to provide staff development for teachers relative to the Minnesota graduation assessments back when those existed. So there's this period, you know, after what we call the BSTs, the basic skills tests from 1998, then we went to the MCAs. In the midst of all this, someone decided that people weren't taking, the legislature decided that people weren't participating enough or taking the MCA seriously enough, so they made the last one in each academic cycle a requirement for graduation. You had to be proficient in order to graduate. That became very unpopular and was then rescinded. So that 619 policy is a holdover from that era. It probably should have been retired a long time ago. If you give me a final reading on this for the third reading, because it takes 3 because it's new, the next thing I will do is recommend the retirement of 619.
I was just going to ask that question.
Yeah, but
about 619.
Just to keep all our bases covered, I got a policy in place. Till I get a new one, then I'll get rid of the old one.
Cool.
Or recommend that we get rid of the old one.
So in other words, the School Board Association, which we follow most of their policies, and I'm sure there's plenty of them that have been changed just for Brainerd. This was, why were these changes made? Because Education Minnesota Brainerd wants them changed? Is that what's going on?
There's some history to the participation in the staff development committees. First of all, there's a statute in play.
How big is this committee?
It's a committee that would be roughly 25 to 30 individuals. And it's a significant committee because it has legislative authority, it has budgeting authority, and it has planning authority. It's one of the anchor structures of your program.
So it's a big committee. So when it says that certified staff members, the advisory staff committee should be appointed by Education Minnesota Brainerd, all the members shall be appointed by the school board's designee. Is it half and half? Is it?
No, the statute requires that the majority of the members of the committee be teachers.
Okay. So the Education Minnesota Brainerd, this is their committee, basically.
Well, it's our committee.
I get it. I get it. The other question I have for you is it says that by statute we have to spend 2% of our basic budget.
2% of the general fund, Fund 1, must be set aside by law unless we are in statutory operating debt, in which case it can be moved back to an unrestricted use in the general fund. You can at any time, by a vote of the membership, push money back into the general fund. It's rare to do that. Usually you do that to prevent going into statutory debt, operating debt, and then you would do it on an annual basis until that crisis passes.
So my question is what is the general fund, number one? Because I've been trying to figure it out, and I'm pretty good at looking at numbers, and I'm like, there's so many numbers flying around. I think it's about 61 million, is that right? Is that
I would say around
basic fund?
62, I believe, is
So-
the straight
so-
up
so
without
it's 100,000
the
a
supplemental
month.
category. Marcy, do I have that right? 62?
Close enough.
Yeah.
It's close enough. So it's $1.2 million a year is the budget for this advisory committee, which is about 100,000 a month. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I just want to understand what I'm doing so I don't make bad decisions. What do they spend the money on? Is it outside training, sending them here? What, trainers come to us? How does this work?
All of the above. So what you're going to see is the district's staff development allocation is broken into 3 parts. There's money that's subdivided for each site for their own staff development. So each school gets a piece of the pie. So like Forest View would receive about $40,000 a year for site staff development. This money is intended to be used in support of the execution and implementation of their continuous improvement plan and any other staff learning needs. By law, all staff members are eligible to draw from that well. Each site must have its own site staff development committee, which handles vetting requests for staff development dollars against their continuous improvement plan. And so the principal would be a part of that. There's a teacher who chairs that. Again, there's a majority of teachers and administrators who are on that committee.
Right.
And so that's how they handle that chunk. There's what's known as exemplary grants. Exemplary grants are grants that teachers, administrators, any staff member or group of staff members would write as a block grant. We want to go study this. And so what they'll tend to do is this is where you see groups of teachers or staff attending a highly specialized conference, maybe one of the national conferences like ASDC, Learning Forward, or they might be going to the Minnesota Middle School Conference. These grants allow them to go learn, and then there are requirements baked into that grant process that they have to come back, share their learning, show evidence that it's making an impact, and they have to explain how those funds were spent. And there are some statutory things about what you can and cannot
Basically
spend.
a pot of money that everybody kind of picks and, it's got to be approved to go and better yourself. So you said that, and I'm not holding you to these numbers. Not yet.
Oh, I can give you to the
you
penny.
said that Forest View gets 40,000. Well, at $60 million budget, 2% is 1.2 million. So is that?
They don't get.
That's $100,000 a month. So
what? So what the approved budget that I have for this year is $1,005,000 and some chump change.
okay, so it is about. So I'm not too far off.
No, you're
on the
not too
numbers.
far off. So you're looking at about $120,000 goes to the sites out of that. Maybe a little bit higher. It might be closer to 180. I'd have to line them all up.
Where's the rest go?
I'll get there if you let me get through all 3 corners of the budget.
Oh yeah, we're only on corner 2, aren't we?
There you go.
All right.
Okay, $75,000 a year goes to the exemplary grants, and then you have the rest going to district staff development, and in the district staff development portion, it's broken out into a couple different pots as well. One is there are some agreed upon positions with the association that these are paid positions that do work in support of teachers in the district, so you're paying salaries. This is where the big chunk is. Okay, so the literacy coaches that each elementary school has, that's 3.2 FTE worth of veteran teachers who've received an immense amount of training, who work with teachers in the classroom around literacy and reading, that pays their salaries.
100% of it.
Yes, 100% of that, 3.2. The amount of literacy coaching you have in a building is relative to the number of teachers you have. So the footprint for literacy at Baxter is larger than Harrison.
Right, which is
by scale. It's proportional.
Makes sense.
Okay. The Data and assessment coordinator for the district was moved into this a number of years ago as a way to protect the general fund because there was a surplus of money in that pot of district staff development. When I showed up 10 years ago, there was over $1 million of unused staff development dollars. And so we worked with the District Staff Development Advisory Committee and the then president of the union, Tim Edinger, to create a plan to bring that back down to living on the annual allocation. That's why we moved the literacy coaches in there, because we were afraid we would not be able to sustain our literacy program. It was a very strategic decision. The next step that we did was, instead of further reducing staff at Forest View during a budget cut numbers of years ago, we moved a district employee who's the data and assessment coordinator who provides the data, all that data you see me present. The person who generates that, pulls that, reports that, manages our relationship with the federal government and the state of Minnesota. We pushed that job into district staff development because we could afford it there, and that protected other positions in the district. The remaining around $350,000 that's in that is what I use to run district staff development. So if I'm paying for subs when teachers want to come out and work on curriculum, I'm running the district advisory committee out of this. I use this money to pay for curriculum writing time. There's some reimbursement in place for office management, some travel reimbursement relative to those assigned positions. There is a budget document for this that can be brought forward that gives you the detail of it.
Well, we could do it without being in a meeting, I suppose. I was just curious.
Nope, that's it.
Says staff
I'm glad
development and
that
mentoring.
question's being asked, because I've pushed on this issue for a number of years.
Oh, there we go. I like numbers, so keep the numbers out of the policies, and I won't even ask questions.
By law, I will be required to put numbers in policies.
I'm just razzing you. Well, okay, who's gonna get?
Is there a motion or not yet?
No motion is yet.
I'll make a motion to approve the second reading of 425 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Spear, seconded by Director Ward, to approve second reading of MSBA Policy 425 as presented. Any further discussion?
Just a question of Tim. Do we share these ideas that are developed in all of the elementary schools? I mean, you talked about there's a pot of money for staff development. Do we share the good things that are happening and try to get other elementary schools maybe to possibly, hey, take a look at this. This is really working well for us. Or are we working in a silo?
Neither,
okay.
Actually. What I would say is we work very hard to get consensus among the 6 elementary schools together before we try anything. Okay. There's an idea, there's a very important moral idea behind what you do in curriculum development, staff development. It's called guaranteed and viable. You have to be able to guarantee that no matter what address number a kid walks out of in the morning and what room number a kid walks into that day, they're going to get a high-quality, standards-based curriculum that's equitable against every kid in their grade. And so we work very hard at trying to keep everyone on the same page, but that also means that sometimes we'll pilot something that's a little bit different, and then we'll examine how we've piloted it, share out the results of that. For example, right now, Baxter third grade, I believe, has inverted 3 math units in their scope and sequence, in their pacing guide. They said, hey, look, we'd like to try doing these units first, and we'll come back and do units 1, 2, and 3 after we do that. And they had a reason for it. I won't dig into the minutia. So we talked about it. The elementary math coordinator thought it was a reasonable request, so we set it up as a pilot, identified how we're going to examine it when we're done, and then we'll have a conversation at grade level meetings with all the teachers in that grade level, have that information shared out, and we may consider then making that a permanent change to the scope and sequence or to the pacing guide. And that's our standard process of continuous improvement.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of second reading of MSBA Policy 425 as presented?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Murtha.
Okay. Good evening. In front of you, the next action item for you here is two policies, both around video recording, one in school buses and one in facilities. As part of Blueprint 181, we've added significant amount of video surveillance across all of our facilities. Prior to Blueprint, I know Fran is here. We've had video surveillance on buses for quite some time now. And so in front of you are two standard MSBA policies, with one minor revision that was redlined out of the facilities section, talking, MSBA standard policy had about surveillance in restrooms and locker rooms. We don't have that, so I struck that out of our base policy here, but both of these policies are standard from MSBA. No changes from the first reading.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion from Director Dondelinger, seconded by Director Spear, for the approval of the second reading of MSBA Policy 711 and 712 as presented. Any further discussion?
Obviously, there's school districts that do have video surveillance in bathrooms. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it, correct?
MSBA has that language in there for some reason. I don't know which of those districts they are, but
okay.
I'm assuming at some point somebody has requested it.
Okay.
But it's not in our facilities.
Has there ever been a consideration to at least have a camera showing who's going in and going out, but not necessarily showing anything that would be not appropriate?
We have, there's building code that we have to follow as far as visibility into restrooms and locker rooms, and we do have video surveillance in our common areas and hallways and leading up to our private facilities. So to answer your question, yes, we have them around, but not in that specific area.
Okay, so we have cameras outside showing who's going into a locker room.
We're observing the hallway, generally
Gotcha.
observing the hallway, yes.
Cool.
Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the approval of second reading of MSBA Policy 711 and 712 as presented, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. That concludes action items for this evening. We'll move on to informational. We'll start with Brainerd Public Schools Foundation with Superintendent
I'd like to give a half-hour presentation. Just kidding.
Cliff notes.
Cliff notes, all right, we can handle cliff notes. Actually, the board met today, so they had a full board meeting, really looking at overall budget audit considerations they've actually done. Jessica, I'm looking at you. We hit the $750,000 mark when you look at what's being donated to schools and that's all turned back out to scholarships typically. So you look at the endowment, so that's significant. Our scholarship window is open right now. I think our seniors have till February 28th to apply for scholarships, right, till the end of the month. So that's very exciting. Over $120,000 will be awarded in scholarships, and they're anticipating that'll be higher. So that was our low estimate. So that's super exciting and just great work from our foundation. They are working on their big event, which is that first Saturday in February. I'm looking at Susanna, I think you're on the team working with the big event too, rounding up. Tickets are going fast because it'll be hosted out at the Woods again. And again, that's one of their big fundraisers when you look at the significant dollars that are going back to our students and scholarships and to innovative opportunities for staff in our classrooms. And I am pleased to announce that I will be stepping down as the informational reporter, and Director Spear will be taking over for the Schools Foundation. So
I'm also pleased to announce that.
yeah, it's a great group doing great work. They're small, but they're definitely mighty, and a great reflection of our community. So that's all I have from our foundations. Unless, Jessica, you think I missed anything. All right, and I think I did that in less than 2 minutes, not 30.
Nice work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Equity Task Force update falls to me. We have a meeting tomorrow afternoon. In the meantime, probably the biggest thing that's happened since the last update was given is that there's continuing review and research around the behavioral and social and emotional supports. We finally got a hold of the state data, survey data that's now finally been made public. So many areas of the survey data that we've been able to review, or the task force has been able to review, really matches up pretty consistently with what's going on in our own district. It matches up with the work that we're trying to do in the equity area. So we're going to spend time with that data, and we'll probably have some recommendations coming up in February or March to work with the district as it relates to recommendations around what to do with that data and how to proceed. That's it, less than 2 minutes. Got a trend.
Excellent.
Next up is the business services report.
I don't
Marcy
think
Lord.
Marcy can do that in 2 minutes.
Start the timer. In your packet is the enrollment report. So this is just tracking every month what our student count is. So we call it the, counting out noses. When Mary talked about ADMs, at the end of the year that converts. So is that me? At the end of the year, that converts to, if somebody was here all year, it's a 1.0, as she said. And if it's a high school student, it's a 1.2. So the report you see September through May is head count, but the blue is what's in the budget, which is ADMs. So it's kind of apples and oranges, but so you guys can see how we're tracking with our head count, if that makes sense. Looking back at the last 4 years, the 4-year averages were normally down about 63 kids. At this time, we're only down 31, so that's good. We're tracking better than we had in the past. The next report is the financial report for June. Since we have that final, you're getting the final report. Otherwise, normally you get this report monthly based on the previous, 2 months prior. So the next report is November's. Director Dondelinger talked about all the funds, so I'll do just a real brief overview. The post-employment benefits debt service fund, I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. And the debt service fund, those are funds for our debt payments. The post-employment benefits trust fund, we issued bonds several years ago, and we put those funds into a trust so that we could pay for other post-employment benefit costs, and we just slowly draw those funds down as we have those expenses. The building construction fund would be for any projects we have going on, which obviously is Blueprint 181. The community service fund is for community ed programs. The food service fund is for the food service program. And the general fund is everything else. Buildings and grounds, district office, teaching, instructional, everything else is in the general fund. So that's the 2-minute version. Any questions?
Okay. All right, thanks, Marcy.
Wow.
All right, superintendent's report. Dr. Hahn.
Just the last thing, I'm looking forward to, we get more quality time. I'm glad we've had these 3+ hours this evening. So starting tomorrow, I'll be going down with Director Heidman and Director Ward and Director Brecken. We'll start some training tomorrow night. And we get to go to training all day together on Tuesday, and then really looking forward to then Director Ward and Director Spear and Director Boyles joining us on Thursday. So we have a quality school board week, which is good, because being a new board, this will give us an opportunity to learn together. All of that information is public information, so people will know that we'll be down. It's listed on our Phase 1, Phase 2 training, and then the leadership conference itself. So lots of learning, so I'm looking forward to that. And that's what I have for a report tonight.
Thank you. So just for future meetings, Dr. Hahn already indicated January 10th through the 13th during this week, various school board members will be matriculating down to the Twin Cities for various conferences and trainings and so forth. And then we have our next regular school board meeting. Do we stick with that? We have another meeting in January 30th, right? So it's not on here on the printed agendas that you folks have?
It had to be approved, so you approved the new
Yeah,
calendar.
so we approved that, so it's not listed here, but we do have another school board meeting a special board meeting on January 3rd, and our next regular school board meeting on February 13th. Continuing here at Forest View for the near future. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
What was the date on that special meeting?
January 30th.
30th, okay, I thought you said
And it'll
3rd.
actually be counted as a regular meeting because it's published ahead of time.
Oh, is it? Okay.
There'll be
My
public
apologies.
comment. The main purpose of the meeting will be the budget revision. Now that the audit's been done and approved, you can now have that formal budget revision approval. So we'll schedule that for the 30th. By making a regular meeting, it does allow us to add other items as needed if something pops up, but the main focus will be the revision.
So I move to adjourn.
Good job. Second.
I have a motion from Director Brecken, a second from Director Donnellinger to adjourn the meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned, ladies and gentlemen. Thank Thank you.